Good evening and welcome to the June 22nd St. Cloud Area School District 742 Board meeting. Our mission is to create a safe and caring climate and culture in which we prepare, engage, educate, empower, and inspire all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. Mr. Mose, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And now would you call roll?
Bruce Henches.
Here.
Monica Segura-Schwartz. Here. Bruce Mose here. Al Dahlgren.
Here.
Jerry Von Korf. Jeff Polrice.
Here.
Shannon Hawes.
Here.
Record will show that we're joined this evening by Superintendent Willie Jett, Assistant Superintendent Marcia Beisch, Director Joni Olson, Director Carol Potter, Director Gary Ganji, Director Tammy Deland, Director Tammy Flinbeau, and Director Amy Scallarud. Amy Scallarud. Pardon me, Amy.
Thank you. First up is the consent agenda. I'm going to start the consent agenda with a change to the approval of the agenda. We would like to take item, discussion action item A, the Minnesota High School League participation, what was it called? The Minnesota High School League, and move that up before the discussion item for special education, just because we have some people here that would like to get moving this evening, and the special education will probably be a fairly long presentation. So if we could just move that up to the discussion, or the action item up before the discussion items, that would be, and I'm going to leave that in there, so if you vote to approve tonight's agenda, or if you vote yes for the consent agenda, that would be with that minor change. I also have two items that are being asked to be pulled from the consent agenda. Item I, Quarry View Change Order Number 3, eliminate solar panels, and item K, Apollo HVAC, add $163,210. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the amended consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, could we also pull item L? I just have a brief question that I never got a chance to.
Okay, so we will also pull item L, which is the ties membership withdrawal notification. So now I'd be looking for a motion to approve the amended, and the amendment is to change the order of that one item. Consent agenda minus items I, K, and L.
Mr. Chair, you said remove the solar panels. Are you leaving everything else in but the solar panels, or are we removing the entire I?
Yeah, well, I can't do just a portion. I'm pulling item I. So it'd be the full I, but.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you for that clarification.
Mr. Chair, are you looking for a motion for that?
Yes.
To approve it. I would move to approve the amended consent agenda and the amended meeting agenda. Is
Okay.
that correct?
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion before we vote on the consent agenda? If not, Mr. Mose, would you take the roll?
Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Jeff Polrice.
Yes.
Monica Segura-Schwartz.
Yes.
Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes. Now we'll move to item I. Jeff, you had a question on item I, the Quarry View Education Center change order.
Yeah, the question was just for clarification. It is the removal of the solar panels. I was just wondering why that's necessary or what happened.
So the original specifications for that project had some wall solar panels, and in discussions with the construction manager and the architect on that project, it was determined that the energy savings payback just really isn't there for that kind of system on that size of a building. And so that paneling system, it was a very small area of a exterior wall, and so that was removed from the plans.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on item I? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Yep.
Yeah, I'll motion.
Okay, Shannon. Jerry?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Mose, would you call roll?
Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Jerry Van Korf,
Yes.
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Jeff Pulrice,
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes. Bruce Henches,
Yes.
Monica Seguda Schwartz.
Yes.
Next, we have item K, the Apollo HVAC. Jeff, you had a question on that.
Thanks, I did. It states that we're adding $163,210.38 for a revision, and I just wanted to know, why aren't those revisions caught when the bid was spec'd out in the first place? Would this company still been awarded the bid with those additional costs? Because if I remember right, these bids are really close. And third, did other bids received already include what is needed in the revision?
So typically with a remodeling project of this size, there are going to be a lot of things that aren't known at the time that the original specifications are put out. So it's not that these changes would have been anything that any of the other bidders would have included in theirs, in their bids. All of the bidders would have put forth bids based on the same scope of work. This is additional scope of work, and I apologize, I don't have the details as to the nature of how it came about. But as I said, in a project of this size, it's not uncommon that you're going to find additional unknowns as you start getting into walls and ceilings and things like that, that just can't be known at the time that the bid specifications are compiled.
That's the case with this one, because it's roof demo, I mean, that should have been known, metal roof, metal deck flutes. Some of that seems like it should have been known going in, but I'll take your word on it.
Jerry?
So we talked about a change order the last time, and I asked if the amount of the change is items that were bid times price bid, or are these items that didn't have unit costs in the bid?
Looking at the description of the items, I wouldn't think that it's a quantity type of a situation. I would anticipate that it was conditions that weren't known at the time that the specifications were put together.
So I just want to be clear about that, because it is, the bid is submitted with the understanding that quantities may vary, and when the bidder bids a unit price, they know the totals of all of that, but in fact, they're bound by their bid to provide quantity times price. So it's very unusual for the total price at the end of a construction project to be the same as the engineer or architect's estimated price.
Any other discussion on this one? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second? A motion and a second. Mr. Would you call roll?
Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Monica Seguda Schwartz.
Yes.
Jerry Van Korf.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren,
Yes.
Jeff Pulrice,
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes.
Next, we have item L, the ties membership withdrawal notification. Mr. Henches, you had a question on that.
Does this mean that we are no longer going to be a part of ties? And could you, is this, Gary, your kind of domain? Could you just explain that?
Absolutely. Ties has been going through some restructuring over the past couple years. This spring, they came up with some different pricing structures. Currently, we have two services from Ties. One is our data warehouse, or Cognos, and then the other one is internet access. As part of the Ties bylaws, with the price increase, we couldn't shop around this year because we need to provide ties notice by the end of July. So what this item is to provide ties that notice, and it gives us some time to shop around. Number of the metros are looking at doing the same thing. And we do have the option of staying with ties. We just have to provide them that notice before the end of July. We can still use their products, but at a different pricing structure, and that's really what we want to look at. With the membership comes a percentage for other ties services. It could be technical services, it could be training services. Most of the schools are within the metro area. We're a ways out, and we really want to examine if that's a value to us.
So it's just an issue of, we think we can get the same services that we receive from ties, but we can get them at a lesser cost.
Yeah, we could check with some other telecoms for internet access to see what the pricing is. And then it would give us a chance to take a look at, do we still use the ties data warehouse at a non-member rate, or do we look for a different product? It buys us some time.
All right, thank you.
Questions, Jerry?
Just to clarify, this, if we vote for this, we are not withdrawing from ties. We are giving notice about and preserving the right. So the decision to withdraw will come later. But if we don't pass this, then we lose the right to make that decision.
Bruce?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Ganji, I remember that work session at which time we rolled this out, and it was quite exciting, and it had a lot of promise, and the dashboard and all of the accessibilities that instructional, operational, even to some measure governance, as I recall, had. But it was really the best flavor at the time. This was a game changer in terms of accessing data. And I'm following the line of questioning from my colleagues right here, just hoping that I can give some added value to this. That's all I'm trying to do here. But am I assured, or are we assured that, and I think Mr. Von Korf asked this question, we're assured that those services, those things that were promised, those things that we said were so important to us at the time, we are not stepping back in our ability to access data that's of importance to the district to make decisions. We're still having access in some regard, either with them or some other entity, but we're not handicapping ourselves in any manner. Am I correct in that rambling?
Correct. So,
Okay.
so we will still have the ties data warehouse this year. We can still use it. This just gives us the opportunity to withdraw if we so choose by the end of the next school year.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't think the board interface has been active for over a year. I haven't been able to get in. I just get a... What's that?
I too had insuperable difficulties using that system and gave up.
Yeah, when I try to go in, it just gives an error code, and that's...
We'll have
But
Dr.
aside
Huff
from,
check it
aside
out,
from that,
yes.
we're looking at giving a notice to them so that we have the ability to withdraw, whereas if we don't give notice, we don't have the ability to withdraw. So it's a wise thing to do. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make that motion now.
Jeff, second?
I'll second.
Bruce? Motion second. Could you call roll?
Jeff Pulrice,
Yes.
Bruce Henches,
Yes.
Monica Seguda Schwartz, Bruce Mose, yes, Shannon Hawes,
Yes.
Jerry Von Korf, Al Dahlgren.
Yes. Okay, next we are going to go to the discussion action item A, the Minnesota High School League membership renewal. Andrea Swanberg.
There we go. Thank you for having me here. I appreciate it. Board members, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett. Again, thank you. As you know, we need to renew our Minnesota State High School League membership. And part of that renewal, the High School League is requesting that school boards take a look at this Why We Play training video. And the purpose of it is to define the purpose of education-based activities. And activities are a valued part of our culture. You know, we value those activities because we believe students who are involved acquire something through their participation. But have we ever really looked closely at how they benefit? What do the students who participate in our programs actually get from participating, and what is the purpose of education-based activities? And looking at the athletic end, because that's where the focus is on this training video, is the athletics. We want to develop not only better athletes, but better people. And so our platform, in talking to Mr. Langerud, the Apollo Activities Director, we want our coaches, people involved in the activities, to teach the core values to the athletes and qualities that not only transcend the outcome on the scoreboard, but contribute to the well-being and human growth and development of the student athletes that we serve. And so each of our coaches, we know all of our coaches, they have their goals. Their goal is they want to win. They want to win a conference title. They want to get to the state tournament, and an ultimate goal to win the state tournament. But what is their purpose? Why do they coach? And so each of our coaches have a purpose statement. This is their purpose. Why do I coach? And we ask our coaches, tell your athletes, this is our purpose. Tell your parents, this is our purpose. And even our captains and leaders, I meet with them once a month, and I had my captains and leaders develop a purpose statement. What is their purpose as leaders, as captains in their activities? And that was a really interesting exercise as well. What I'll do is show you this video, and then if anyone has any questions after, you can ask. Thank you.
I think the culture of sport is broken. Success is defined by winning, by having more points on the scoreboard at the end of the day than the other team. That's where the value lies. And whose name is in the paper the next day? And who had the most points? And who had the most rebounds? And who won the game? And who gets to the championship?
It's the reason why we do it.
The Minnesota State High School League's Jody Redmond is passionate about developing the human potential of students. She's leading a national movement to reclaim the purpose of sports.
The pressure to win, and sometimes at all costs, is significant. Kids feel it. They feel it from their coaches, they feel it from their parents, they feel it from their friends. They feel the pressure to be able to win.
When we think of how our culture values high school sports today, certain words come to mind, and that of former coach and NFL star Joe Ehrman.
Destructive.
Expectations.
Regressive.
Trophies.
Ooh.
Win at all costs.
Lack of value.
Win at all costs.
Lack of value. Yes. Missed opportunities.
Zero fun, sir.
Zero fun. Misguided.
Unfortunate.
Unfortunate. Sad.
When we look at education-based athletics and what a trophy means, I think it's about the experience. It's about what did we provide those students that was life-sustaining through trying to get the trophy.
Today's student athletes feel the pressure to compete at a high level, so they drop out of sports. 70% quit by the age of 13, and they miss out on a big educational benefit.
There's a University of Kansas study that draws a correlation between kids who participate and are involved in high school athletic and activity programs. Students that are involved in those activities do much better academically than students who are not. the research shows that the reason for that is school connectedness.
It's been amazing what we've learned.
5 years ago, Mounds View High School began to survey their students, asking what they really get from being involved in the school's athletic and activity programs.
I was shocked to find out that our coaches and advisors are equally as important in the lives of our students as our teachers. It was a game changer for us. Our whole district, where we're going and how we value activities, it's not after school. It's a part of the educational process. It is no longer an extra. We've defined that, and it's something that we value every bit as much as what they do during the school day.
The purpose of high school athletic programs is not to develop college or professional athletes. In fact, most students, 97%, will not play organized sports after they graduate. Instead, these powerful mentors we call coaches have 4 years to make a difference in kids' lives, to teach them life lessons that will help prepare them to be successful in life.
I will be honest, our goal is to win. Our goal in many sports is to win a state championship.
Winning has a place, and there is value in learning how to win. However, that's not our purpose.
Our purpose is to enjoy that experience, enjoy their teammates, enjoy their coaches, and learn from whatever took place on the field or the court or on the ice on that given day.
Our purpose isn't the score at the end of the game. The purpose is the growth and development that comes through trying to achieve that win.
3 objectives I have. I want them to be a better baseball player, a better teammate, and a better person at the end of the year.
We're working with coaches to develop their own purpose statement.
So why do I coach the way that I do? It comes because I had a couple coaches in my life that touched me and changed my life.
Joe Ehrman has been called the most important coach in America and a leading voice for change in how we coach our kids in sports today.
Why do you coach? Is it about you or is it about your players?
Yeah, transactional coach is basically a coach that uses his platform and position for his own self-edification, for his own identity, his own empowerment at the expense of the development of their players. It's kind of, if you meet my needs, my demands as a transactional coach, then I'll give you playing time, I'll give you praise, some kind of plaudits, but it's basically using young people.
As a child growing up, I had a lot of transactional coaches when I was younger because I was a very talented kid. Once I got to high school, my head coach, I didn't have a dad, so my head coach was my dad. It was tough. And he showed me I'm more than just an athlete.
Transformational coaches basically understand the power, platform, position they have in the lives of young people, and they're going to use that to change the arc of every young person's life, to help them develop morally, ethically, socially, and emotionally. Transformational coaches mentor young people, and to mentor you have to build a relationship with people. Transactional coaches do nothing but monitor young people. They move them from drill to drill, season to season, no relationship, no contact.
When I first started coaching, I only had one goal, and that was to win at all costs. And I don't use that term lightly. I know how it sounds, and I'm not very happy with who I was as a coach then. Now looking back,
to be a better coach, you got to be a better you.
And now our focus is much more on what I'll call trying to build a team family within the chemistry of our individual teams that I coach, and trying to find ways for our athletes to grow as people. Get excited, can't wait, let's go.
Every day, Coach Troy Kors works hard to keep his purpose alive in everything he does, and he's helping his team student athletes to do the same.
Good. Nice. What 3 words would identify you as an athlete? This is completely you as an individual, and what you want to get out of the sport.
Family.
Okay, how come?
Because you basically feel like a family. You can go to them for anything. They'll help you with anything.
The word I chose was friendship. I like going to track practice, hanging out with people I know, and just getting to know them. Go! I chose responsibility because I feel like you have to be able to rely on others, and you have to be reliable yourself.
So I'm going to take 5, you have 6, you have 7. I grabbed 3 words as well, and mine goes like this. I coach to create positive relationships with my athletes so they know I care about them while striving to be an authentic leader who they can trust as we both work together to discover joy in our sport and through competition. It was a good time, a 13.65.
Thank you.
Nicely done. Well done, well done.
I'm mostly in track just to have fun. Just because I'm not the best doesn't mean it's a problem.
Well, the big group's kind of like family to me.
For me, it looks like we're enjoying ourselves more. The idea of sharing in something and enjoying each other's company and being a part of a sport we love to play. And for me, that's been the biggest change I see.
For a coach to withstand the pressure of the current win-at-all-cost sports culture and to truly be invested in transforming the lives of students, there must be support. Support from school leaders, parents, and the community. For this to happen, we must want more for our kids than just wins, losses, and a good performance.
We want to give them more. We want to give them a significant experience that's going to help them develop into people that are going to live in our community. We want to give them a way of being successful that will sustain them throughout their lifetime, not just until the season's over. So we have to align school communities around this idea that we are purpose-based, we're education-based.
I want school boards to reclaim sports in the name of education. I think school boards need to make sure that we move away from this win at all costs. We need to start building a system where coaches are held accountable for the transformative impact they have in the lives of their students.
It really boils down to what do we want to give our children? Beyond the trophy, beyond just the win and the loss, beyond the trophy case.
Hopeful.
Filled with potential.
Men and women of great character.
Yeah. Confusion and mistake-making rocks.
And every child feels loved and belongs.
Connected.
Greater relational capacity.
Wow. You're rocking. What else you got in there?
Anybody have any questions for me?
Jeff?
Not a question, just a comment, though. I've seen lots of examples of this here in our district. I mean, most recently, the gymnastics team, those young ladies, they impressed me. So kudos to your leadership in that area.
Thank you.
Bruce?
How much time do I have? As a former activities director, obviously, this hits close to home for me. And as I'm watching something like this, I think about our district activities mission, or at least our what was our district activities mission statement, which is that the purpose of the student activities program is to provide students the opportunity to pursue excellence in an activity that's important to them while learning life skills that will help them become successful adults. I think that most of our coaches realize that and understand that every year you're not going to be a champion. And I think that they pursue excellence, but do it in a way that respects kids. And I certainly would hope that our activities directors, Andrea and you and Dave, and I know you do, would deal with coaches who lose sight of that goal. I think that it's easier to do and to keep that focus in individual sports than it is in team sports, because the goal, the excellence, can be more easily defined in things other than winning, and that is best times, personal best. You hear that a lot in individual sports. And in team sports, and particularly a lot of them that they show here with the crowds, decisions about playing and all those things are more subjective, and most people will judge the effectiveness of the coach by the final score on the scoreboard. And I think that we have to guard against that. I also think we need to do a great job of explaining to our community the important educational role of the activities program. It is as educational as anything else that we do in our schools. And we heard from the gymnasts, we hear and hear the tremendous impact, lifetime impact, that activities programs have on kids who participate. And it isn't just the athletics, but it's the fine arts, it's the speech and debate, the math league, and those kinds of programs also that we have to make sure we are supporting at a level that allows our students the opportunity to pursue excellence, because it's in doing things like getting up at 6:30 in the morning to go to the weight room, standing in the corner practicing your speech at all hours of the night for the speech team or whatever, that is building in kids today the skills that will help them be successful later on as adults. One of the things that struck me in this also was the comments about the family and feeling a part of the team. I thought that Adam Thielen, who spoke at the St.Cloud Times event, was that last night? Okay, really had some great comments there, and I guess I saw his comments on the news. I wasn't able to attend the event, about what being involved in a team sport meant for him and his development, and why he still continues as a professional today. But there are so many important things. So I would certainly want to recognize and say thanks to our educational leaders who are activities directors, you and Dave and Mike and Joel at the junior high level, for the job that you do. And I would want the message to get back to our coaches and advisors that at least, I believe I can speak for the board when we say that we see these kinds of things happening in our district, and seldom do we see an abuse of students or athletes and activity participants. So thanks for the work that you do.
Bruce Mose.
Mr. Chair, Andrea, thank you very much. And as I would like to associate myself with the remarks of Jeff Polrice and Bruce Henches, but I have a few of my own also. I sit behind here all the time with a little note that I write to myself, and it says to me, better to say nothing and be thought a fool than to open my mouth and remove all doubt. So I'm hoping I'm going to add some added value to this. I'm highly supportive of this administrative recommendation, but I can't watch that film and listen to these testimonies without thinking back to exactly what the impact that these two persons were speaking of in the life of this kid. This was a junior high school long ago. And on the second floor of this junior high school, there was a teacher by the name of Harold House. And Harold House was the advisor for the student council. And he was the person that first, in the area of activities, taught students to be representatives and to be listeners and to choose things to say wisely and to move forward agendas, etc. He was that transformational, transactional kind of person in the area of activities. Myrtle Bacon at Tech High School was that person in the speech and theater departments. You only have to read the history of Tech High School, the first 50 years, to have these names jump out at you. Harold House, Myrtle Bacon, Gertrude Gove, Vern Morrison. These people laid foundations for today. Then I got to Tech High School from this building, and Jim Kiffmeyer, wrestling coach, took me up on a mat, tossed me up there with some other kids that just, you know what the vernacular is, what they do to you when you're unprepared, and sent me over to see Bill Franny, and I was able to play hockey, lettered in hockey for 3 years at Tech High School. Jim Kiffmeyer, Bill Franny. More recently, the conversations I have with our superintendent, Willie Jett, I enjoy the references that we go back and forth and talk about sports. I love to listen to our superintendent talk about coaching and being coached and the lessons he learned and the lessons he taught. And I every time I get a chance to listen to Bruce Henches talk about coaching in this district and the activities, I just am reminded of the importance of what we do here in all of this. This is, as it was stated, this is transformational, transactional, foundational activities, athletics, arts, all of our group activities, all of that in concert with academics. I can't think of a district being successful without a vigorous, well-supported, well-funded, fairly funded programs. And there are people in this room right now that do more than just teach in their subjects. They stay after school, they spend weekends, they spend seasons changing people's lives. So I wanted to say all that, and I guess I could have said nothing and be thought something and could open my mouth and remove all doubt, but I didn't want anybody to doubt my support for this school district and what it does through its mission and its strategic planning to provide for all of our students according to their needs and their abilities. And with that, Mr. Chair, I've said my piece.
Monica.
Hi, Andrea. Thanks. I love the video. I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about what does this mean for us in the school? How does this plays out, and what strategies are you using or your coaches are using from this or in general?
Well, what we do, like I said, all of our coaches now have purpose statements, and then when they go and talk to their athletes, talk to their parents, I tell them, I want you to have your purpose statement out there so that people know, and then teach it, be it, live your purpose statement, and still teach them the skills that they need to be successful, but teach them the skills that they'll need in life to be successful as well. As coaches and advisors, we meet once a month, and we talk about, I find different topics that we talk about on how to make it easier. We talk, I try to set up mentors with new coaches, with veteran coaches, and they work together as well, and just a support system that we do. And then with my captains and leaders, like I said, we set up these, our purpose statement for our captains and leaders, and then I laminated their purpose statement, and then they carry around the purpose statement. And for athletes or kids in activities, it doesn't matter, why do they participate? What's their number one reason? To have fun. And we did that. You saw a little bit of it where each athlete got up and put what was their 3 core values. And the 3 core values for our captains and leaders were positivity, responsibility, and building a fun environment. And so that's what they go out and do. And then my coaches and advisors also know that this is their statement, and so then they use that support as well to help the captains and leaders with the athletes and participants in the lower levels to accomplish that purpose. Does that answer?
Gary?
So my father never participated in sports. I didn't have baseball, I didn't have football, I didn't have golf. And I was kind of a shy kid, and I hung out with kids who weren't in sports, but I went to a school with a graduating class of 103, and they came out and grabbed me because they needed every guy and every gal to play. Otherwise, I never would have been involved. And I'm wondering about the comment that a significant number of kids do not join sports or drop out of sports for a variety of reasons. How are we doing on that? We're kind of a community in transition where some families that we have here have parents and grandparents who just naturally play baseball or football or gymnastics and others who are not automatically, are we making progress in reaching out and bringing more kids in? And do you have the resources? In other words, if we urged you to get more kids in, do you have the resources to do that? And before you answer, let me just say I was kidding around up here about being forced to watch this movie again, and frankly, you can bring it back as many times as you want. It's well worth seeing over and over again. It's a great reminder. So thank you for forcing it on us. It was well received.
You're welcome. We are trying. We're making some progress in getting more students involved. We're not making the progress I want to make. So we go into different classrooms. I set up different times where I can go in and let students know, here are your opportunities. We have brochures. We had in May an 8th grade orientation, and part of that was also just letting them know we have a lot of different activities to get involved, and we keep pushing. We're making what I call baby steps. I want bigger steps, and Dave and I work very hard to try and get a lot more students involved. Do we have the resources? Of course, I always would like more, of course, but I'm a realist, and I know our coaches, our advisors will work very hard with whatever they have and try and be successful for all the students.
Thank you.
Shannon?
Thank you for sharing the video. I wholeheartedly believe in several of the messages that come through there. Of the many things to be proud of in the school district, our athletic programs and our coaching and the kids that they are producing is outstanding and just very remarkable. And I think it goes beyond the on the field, and I'm very touched by what I see on social media or messages that I hear about our team members going down to the elementary schools and being an influence and role models for them, and it's very touching. I do have a question for you. I don't know how long it's been in place, but being in extracurricular activities are lower enrollment, do you think that it's because of cost? And we have a large number of free and reduced meals in our school district, yet when you enroll in a high school activity, besides just the sign-up money, but there's more costs hidden in there that they might even not know are going to be coming their way, but there's a full price cost and there's a free and reduced cost, but there's not a free cost. So nobody, where we have 3 tiers of prices and lunches, we don't have 3 tiers and prices and curricular activities.
Well, we have 3 tiers, but you are correct, we do not have a free. So you have the full price reduced, which is half of whatever the activity fee is. And then if you're on free, then it's $35. However, we've had kids that have come into my office and they really want to participate. I'm not going to say no. We work something out. I work something with the student, and I try and make it what it's easiest for them to help them do whatever they can, because I don't want to say no to any kid if they want to participate.
Thank you.
Bruce?
Could I? Yeah. Since I'm the farthest away, that I'll go first. Okay. Thanks, Bruce Mose. I wanted to follow up on what Jerry said, and it's really tied to what Shannon said also. When you take a look, people have this impression that the activities program, and especially the athletic program in District 742 or in many school districts, is this large financial burden for the school district. The reality of it is the net cost of our activities program is less than 2% of our operating budget. Now, it isn't too long ago, and Jerry, you asked the question about, are we attracting all of the kids that we should be attracting who could benefit from this program? It wasn't too long ago that we did not charge for free lunch students to participate. So at a time where we've had significant growth in our free and reduced lunch student population, we are charging for those students to participate. And frankly, I came through this system from a family of 10, and I would not have been able to participate myself, at least not in 3 activities, had there been the activity fees that we have today. So I would hope that eventually this board might want to take a look at, in greater detail, our entire activities program, perhaps have a board-level activities committee that might study that and some other issues to really make some suggestions about how we can best support the activities directors and get as many kids as possible involved in what there's plenty of research to prove are programs that are of tremendous value to kids. So,
Bruce.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Swanberg, just can you speak just very briefly, but just right directly to the question of how are we engaging our young East African females to participate, and how are we engaging their parents in the proper, sensitive manner to get them to be supportive of their young daughters participating in our sports at a level of their enrollment in this district. We see the value of those young men that are participating, the value for them. I'm not asking for any detail. I mean, I'm certain this is all going on, but are we being vigorous and intentional and purposeful and deliberate and saying we need to see these faces also?
Yeah, we're doing what we can. Dave and I work together to try and get in and get as many. Can we do more? Absolutely. And should we do more? We're brainstorming this summer. What can we do more to get more of our girls out and participate? Because we have a few, and the girls that I talk to, they love it. And they're having a good time. So now it's just, let's get more. Bring more of your friends. I talk to them. They're in my office, and how can we get more girls out and that support? And so we can do better. Dave and I are working very hard to try and get more.
To add to that, at the moment, Andrea is being modest in terms of what she and Mr. Langerud are actually doing. So just to add something to that, the outreach. So she's talking about that they're brainstorming, but some examples that I've witnessed from them. The outreach. So they are reaching out to the community. They are in constant dialogue. There have been conversations in meetings with the elders. They have been in contact with the high school league in terms of we're not the only community that is going through change, but there's been other communities. So they've checked and looked at best practices to increase enrollment or participation. They've looked at uniforms. They've had different companies such as Nike come in and describe or present the different uniforms and had those kind of conversations with the particular community. So those are just, I'm listening to Andrea give a brief snapshot of it, but from my lens, there's just a few other things that I know that she and Mr. Langerud have been doing and continue to do. And I say thank you for that.
Monica.
Okay, Willie, since we have gone this route now, because I think that we're a little bit out of topic at this point, but what I'd like to know is, as part of your strategic plan, how is strategically thinking about outreach and not in a specific one population by other populations? What kind of information are you looking within activities directors about? What is the composition that you currently have within the teams? And how does that look like? And more in a what is the plan is kind of what I'm interested in.
If you're asking me what is the specific plan and give you the detailed outline of that, I could not answer that at the moment. If you're looking at the strategic plan, one of the things on the strategic plan is creating a safe and welcoming environment. And so the strategic plan was implemented, 3 years ago? I think we're in the second year of implementation, or the second year of being able to look at some baseline data. If you looked at the participation numbers in the beginning compared to what the baseline numbers are, or to the numbers of participants are now, there is a difference. And that's something that Andrea has described in terms of the answering question for the board, in terms of numbers and what can we do. In terms of do we have a constant dialogue about that or have a constant conversation? I don't have a weekly or a monthly check-in with Andrea or with Dave Langer. They're doing that with their principal. And the principals, we have that internal dialogue with the district administration. Do I have conversation with Andrea? Yes, I do. Do I have conversation, or as a district administration, do we have that constant dialogue to see what can we do to support in that quest for participation? The answer is yes. But do we have that strategically outlined and graphed? The answer is no.
Jerry?
Well, and I don't think it's just kids free and reduced, or, I mean, I wasn't free reduced lunch kid, but somebody practically dragged me into sports and made me feel important, and, you know, kind of begged, borrowed, and said, hey, this is something you should do. And I think that maybe if we have a dialogue with coaches and even give them some SMART goals, not that they're going to get fired if they don't, but some kind of SMART goal that says our goal this year is to bring X number more kids who wouldn't have come on their own, or something like that. Maybe that's not the right solution, but that it should be part of their evaluation. Are they bringing? This is important to us. We want to bring more people in, and if you need support, I've got $35 in my, to make it happen.
I think what helps a lot, what's helping, at least at Tech, is that we're able to hire more teachers that are also coach. And then so they have them in the classroom, and we have those teachers that are really pushing kids to come out for activities. And that's made a big difference for us. I've seen an increase in some of the different activities where the coach is also a teacher, or at least works in the building, and that makes a huge difference.
Jeff?
Can you tell me if we have a strong intramural program in sports? Because when I went to school, it was 550 kids graduating. You had to be a superstar to play. But I had a blast in intramural sports. I played a lot of those. Is there a fee? Do we have that still?
We do not have an intramural program. We do have a couple clubs. For example, we have a badminton club that meets in the spring, and there is no cost for that. But we do not have an intramural program right now when it comes to intramural sports.
What's the hurdles? Do you see one starting back up, or?
Cost and then time in a gym. Right now, for example, in the winter, our gym is occupied till sometimes 9 o'clock at night. And then to try and bring in intramurals after 9 o'clock, that's pretty tough.
Got it. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think from my standpoint, I still wish that the Minnesota High School League would update their video and make it a little bit more of a activities video and not so much a sports video. Sports aren't for everybody. They're a lot more fun when you're really good at something than they are when you sit on the bench and don't get to play a whole lot. But if I look, just in the last month, we sat in this room and had a celebration for the top 20 students in the district, and this year there was actually 21. When we go through and read their profiles, we read off activity after activity after activity after activity that they participated in. And in most cases, they participated in a whole lot more non-athletic activities than they participated in athletic activities. And those are bright, shining stars that are going to go on and be very successful in their lives. I have no doubt with those 21 kids. I mean, they're exceptional students, and in some cases exceptional athletes, but not all cases exceptional athletes, but they were all exceptional activities participants. And I think that needs to be pointed out more and more, and we have a lot more than just sports in the district, and there's so much focus on sports, but not all kids are made out for that. So thank you, Andrea.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Next, we will move into the information items, student services, special education presentation. Carol Potter, Executive Director.
Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. I have the privilege tonight of sharing with you our department update. And just to get you slightly excited to start, we're not actually going to cover the entire student services and special education department. We decided to cut it in half this evening and share with you the student services portion, and in the fall we'll share the special education portion with you as well. So the purpose of our department is what we do is we provide services and supports which enable children to access core and specialized instruction. And really what that means is that we are in service of students, just like our title says. We're student services, and so we are in service providing creative solutions to keep our kids in school and in their classrooms, and so that everything and anything that happens in a student's life, we are there to support and provide a solution for them to access their instruction. So if a student is medically fragile and they need to have their services at home, we do that. If a student breaks their leg and they need access to school in a different way, specialized transportation or a key for the elevator at Tech, for example, we make sure that that happens. And so anything that occurs in their life, we are there to think about that and provide a solution for them. This is a casual picture of my student services special education leadership team, and a good portion of them are behind me tonight, and I would just like to introduce them to you, and if they want to wave, just so you know who they are. Stand on this side. Okay. Chris Pitt is one of our special education supervisors. Brenda Blackmore is a director of special education programming. Kate Bukowski is a director of our Level 4 programming. Tom Hanisch, he is one of our supervisors. Colleen Carlson is our director of care and treatment. And Julie Midas is our director of early childhood. And Jeff Horton, right here behind me, is our director of student services. In special education and student services, we often talk with students about expected and unexpected behavior. So for example, in a social situation, if we are teaching students social cueing and something unusual happens and the receiver of that information wasn't prepared for that information, we would say to a student, well, that was unexpected behavior. And so we, in those same terms, have had some unexpected things happen in our department this year. And so some of those things are, for example, we had 50 new licensed staff. And so that goes across special education and student services. That is some OTs, some nurses, teachers across. And so 50 new staff is a lot of staff to teach due process to and a lot of staff to teach instruction to. And we worked really hard at providing that for them this year. So we are excited about that, and we are also happy to report that we are fully staffed moving into the fall. Last year at this time, we were looking to hire about 35 new staff at this time, and for this coming fall, we are fully staffed. So we're very excited about that. Another unexpected for us was the closure of the Catholic Charities residential program. We did not expect that by the end of April that our students who were serviced there would no longer be a part of that. And so for this fall, we have shuffled things around, shuffled staff around, and shuffled our programming around, and have moved our facility. Our students will now be in just the Cottage 2 on the Catholic Charities site, and we are also looking forward to doing that and renewing that program. We also unexpectedly, we had the passing of 3 students this year and 1 staff member. We never look forward to that at all. That is very hard on us, and it's very hard on the families that we serve, obviously. And with that, our students, we often say that we serve our students birth to 21, but we service our students wherever they are. So if we have students that are being serviced in hospice, we are there to teach those students. If we have students in a classroom, we are there to teach those students. And so we really do cover the gamut when we are working with kids. Also, then, we had the scare with the measles. Now, thankfully, we did not have an outbreak, but we were very proactive in our response to that. And again, it was unexpected for us, and so we put our pieces together with our health services staff and made sure that we had appropriate responses. We worked with communications to make sure that the correct information was going out, and I feel like we did a really good job in responding to the needs of our community. And then also, lastly, we had some unanticipated budget reductions for this year, and we're working to reorganize our staff at this time. And like I said, we are fully staffed for the fall, so we're really excited about that. And we are just going to be creative in the way that we go about solving solutions at the site level. So from unexpected to exceeding expectations, and Andrea had mentioned some of the participation, and so it was a really good prelude for what I'm going to talk about next. Is our adaptive softball team this spring were state champions. And what a great way for our students to participate. It was very exciting. When they came back from the state tournament, they marched the hallways of Apollo, and we all got to stand in the hallway and clap for them. It was very, very exciting. And then also with that, Representative Emmer on C-SPAN recognized our team, and I'm just going to play a little bit of that for you.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate the St. Cloud area adapted softball team for winning the state championship earlier this month. Coach Mike Bakken led the team to victory with the help of Tyrell, Frank Ross, Dayton Weingis, and Jordan Williams, who all played exceptionally well. While the individual accomplishments were important, it was a team effort with all 16 players giving it their all and leaving everything they had on the field. The tournament was intense, with St. Cloud coming from behind to win the first game. St. Cloud scored 5 runs in the top of the 7th to beat Chaska 17-14. We're proud of all the players from around the state for their effort in the tournament, and we're especially proud of our St. Cloud area team for their success and their hard work over this past season.
Isn't that great? Yay. Yeah, it was great. Very, very great. So as you can see, it takes a lot of staff to support our students, no matter if they're a special education student or they're general education students. We do service them all. And I'd just like to highlight for you tonight some of our staff. I know that you often hear when there are challenges that are happening in our schools, and I just really want to highlight for you tonight the people that really do go the extra mile and the teamwork that has to happen for our kids to be able to participate. And so one of the examples is our special education teachers from Tech High School. Each year, they bring a group of their DCD students to the Tech Prom. They take them out to dinner. They all go out to dinner together at Applebee's. And then they take them to Lake George and have pictures taken. And they then go down to River's Edge, where it was this year, and have a fun night of dancing. And so our teachers are not asked to do this. Our paraprofessionals are not asked to do this. They are just simply willing to support the students. And as you can see, it's a great fun night for all of them. In addition, I have 3 other short stories I want to share with you about going the extra mile. And in our world, not only do we have external partnerships, so we have the big partnerships for like Centric Care and Catholic Charities and Central Minnesota Mental Health and all of the businesses around town that we work with to get kids jobs. And so we have all of those, but we also have internal partners as well, and we work really hard at developing our internal partners because those are the people that can make the day-to-day difference in the lives of our students. And so the first story, Mr. Dave Langerud, and so not only was he and Andrea instrumental in getting our adaptive softball team up and going again, but Dave one day, and these are 3 things that I personally have witnessed. So there was a student who became dysregulated in the hallway at Apollo, and I was in a conference room, and someone had mentioned that, you know, there's a concern out in the hallway, so I went out to take a look, and by the time I got there, the hall was, they had a portable wall there, so the student wouldn't be visible to other people passing by. And you know, I poked my head in and I said, is there anything that I can help you with? And the person that was, or there were several people there, and they said, go get Mr. Langerud. And I thought, okay. Mr. Langerud is not trained necessarily in de-escalation or CPI or anything else. I thought, okay, that was unusual. And so I headed down the hallway to go get Mr. Langerud, and here he was coming marching down already. And he went behind the portable wall with the student, and the student by this time was very upset and actually had fallen to the floor on his own. And Mr. Langerud got down on the floor and said, he said the student's name, and he said, how are you doing? And the student just popped his head up and said, Mr. Langerud. Like he was the savior to everything, right? And then it was almost passing time, and one of the supervisors poked her head in and said, you know, Dave, do you think you could get the student to move to the classroom there so we're not out in the hallway during passing time? And sure enough, he said to the student, you know what, can you come with me? Can you just come with me? And the student popped right up, walked into the classroom, and so they went to have a great discussion. And so the next day I thought, what in the world? How did this happen? My very trained staff was there trying to help this student, and how did this happen? And so I went down to Mr. Langerud's office. I said, now tell me a little bit more about that. And he said, well, it's easy, Carol. He said, I have lunch every week with this student. This student knows me, and this student trusts me. And so that's the basis of everything we do. And I thought, aha, yep, you're right. You're absolutely right. And the student didn't know the rest of us, but he knew Mr. Langerud. So another person going the extra mile. He didn't need to do that, and he doesn't need to do that, and he does. The second one, Dr. Matt Kyle. He is a technology teacher at Tech High School, and I know that you've seen him because he's talked about his robotics here for the board. And a few weeks ago, a special education teacher came to my office and brought me this wonderful photo album. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. You know, where did this come from? And the teacher proceeded to tell me that this is what they make in Mr. Kyle's class for the end of the trimester project in photography class. And what it showed, it was this belonged to a special education student, and what it showed was that all of these different people in elective courses, so the student was in art, the student was in personal fitness, the student was in woods class, and it just showed me time and time again how amazing our teachers are at having kids participate in their classes, and how proud I felt to have our kids have the opportunity to do that. And so a big thank you to Dr. Matt Kyle for all the work that he does in helping kids participate in a very meaningful way. And then the next person I want to just share a little bit about is Mary Tice Bowden. She is a paraprofessional in our district, and Mary has been around, I think, longer than I have, and I've been here 17 years. And so Mary is in and out of the kids, helping them participate not only daily in their classes, but again, going the extra mile to say, you know what, I'll go to the graduation ceremony. I will be with this student at the graduation ceremony. And not only is it the ceremony itself, but they go to practice the day before. And with our kids with special needs, they even go 2 days before. So they go 3 days in a row of practice to make sure that our kids can participate and walk up the steps and walk across the stage and wear 100-year glasses and do all of the things that their peers are doing. So a big thank you again to Mary for all of her work. These are pictures of the early childhood family night. And again, just an example of teachers going the extra mile to make sure that some of our youngest students in our district are having a great time at their family night. And just when you think that you are out of creativity to help someone access their instruction and you're not quite sure what to do anymore, someone special delivers something that keeps you going an extra mile or two. And this letter was delivered to our Roosevelt Education Center, and I want to read it to you because it is quite amazing and quite moving to the work that is being done. Just a second here. And so this handwritten letter was delivered by a gentleman to the school, and it says, "Every day I see the aura of the new, cool Roosevelt School, and I see the special angels working there. They're the coolest of the cool. Some angels have blonde hair, some angels are even men. They are teaching our special children not just to get by, but how to win. They instruct and teach, they drive, they laugh. Some may even fly. They have great big wonderful hearts sent from the heavens in the sky. Special children need extra special folks to raise and teach them right. All the staff at this school are truly out of sight. I reveal to you at this moment, right here where I stand, it's because of people like you I joined to serve and protect this land. You prepare the children for the future, done the very best that you can. You are the special angels without wings. God bless every woman and every man." As I said, our focus tonight is on student services, and Mr. Jeff Horton is going to share the information as the Director of Student Services with you on all of our new initiatives and the things that we have been working on this year.
Let's roll with this guy. Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, board members. What an exciting opportunity I have tonight, and to share with you what I feel is one of the most exciting areas in our school district. Student services is really a place to be transformational. We saw our video earlier, what our coaches are trying to do on the field. We're trying to do that in the classroom. Every theme that they talk about, I'm like, that's what we're trying to do, that's what we're trying to do, that's what we're trying to do. So as we go through this, I hope you see some of those same themes that you get excited about on the athletic field, in the different activities here that we're trying to do in the classroom. And Carol touched on this earlier. It's really about partnering. It's about being part of a team. Every one of our executive directors, our superintendent, our assistant superintendent partner with us in the different programs that we do. It really is a collaboration to wrap around students, to wrap around our staff and make a difference in their lives, and to really transform their lives to create opportunities for them to be successful. We talked about opportunity to improve excellence. That's what we're trying to do. It's about growth. And you know what? Not everyone's going to be a varsity starter. Not everybody's going to be valedictorian. But we can still make growth. We can feel great about those personal bests in the classroom. We can build those connections. And so I hope that you see that in some of our programming that we're highlighting tonight. We're not going to highlight all of our programs, but we are going to hit on a few. We're going to talk about Section 504 that came up at our last board meeting. What is a 504 plan? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Assistive technology. We're going to talk about ADS, as alternative delivery of specialized instructional services. That's something we partner with teaching and learning on. Our chemical health counselors. Collaborative action team. That is a new team that we have this year. Co-located mental health services, and we're also going to discuss school climate. As an introduction, we have a short video for you. And thank you, Tammy, and thank you, Danny, for all of your work on this. Again, just partnering, they helped us with this, and all the different people that partnered with us. So we have about a 6-minute video that will be kind of an overview of everything we're going to talk about, and then I'll go into the details about those programs.
Looking at the different health conditions and medical needs, and we provide a lot of the education to the school nurse and to the staff on caring for these kids.
So in a school building, you have typically a health para or a licensed practical nurse, and you have a registered nurse or a licensed school nurse. And so those two nurses have different roles, although it is absolutely a collaboration between both nurses to help meet the needs of all the students.
So I provide support to students that are in recovery or struggling with their chemical use, and I do that through individual counseling sessions. I also go into a classroom setting, provide education with the teachers, and then I've seen so many different students come in here struggling with their chemical use, and then all of a sudden make some changes and it clicks for them, and all of a sudden they just grow and see that there's so much more to life and that they can really have a lot of success for themselves.
We meet every Tuesday morning and we brainstorm additional ideas and supports that we can offer to that student and to their school team to help provide them success so that they can stay in their home school. We have felt like we've had some great success with our team this year. It's a new team to our district, and we've been able to provide additional ideas and supports to several students across our sites this year.
And we have tried interventions, and we determined that that student has been successful, and there have been times where students might need a little bit further support than we are able to offer here at Lincoln, and that's when we have referred students to the CAT team.
Having somebody else provide a voice that was delivering clear messages really helped move the process forward and helped us and the parent come to a consensus of finding the student the additional support he needed.
So assistive technology is really any tool that helps a student with a disability meet their IEP goals.
Some examples could be for feeding, for dressing, for writing, for communication, for example.
Well, AIM has allowed students to comprehend text and be successful in school through digital and audio learning. Through my personal experience, I've seen students go from F's in classes up to A's due to using the technology.
Many of our members on PBIS or MTSS were really the same people and working kind of for the same cause, and so we thought it was really important to start thinking about how we would combine our work or work across departments to support one another.
I think that's one thing that we're really looking at, pulling together, having both teams working closely to complete that fidelity inventory so that they're all speaking the same language, they're all working on the same goals.
We have staff copying good slips or positives, and each week we have a drawing, and you can earn a PBIS parking spot, and it's right in front of the school. And here's our wall where we have all, each week we have drawings, and weekly drawings, those students are photographed, and put on our wall for everyone to see. Students love this. They love being recognized publicly.
The PAUSE program has helped me to impact my life by doing my best.
And it helped me feel good about myself.
I had a child who was actually in an ADSYS program for a year. He was making small progress. And then this year, because of the needs that we felt he had, I moved him into a WonderWorks program with also using the Barton strategies to help him sound out words. He's made tremendous growth.
I'm a better reader because I practice reading.
I'm a better reader because I practice sounding out words.
I'm a better reader because I use text evidence.
In prior years, individuals would come and they would start the next day after the district training and just learn as they go. And now we have them come in and we do a training for a day on their responsibilities and expectations of the position. And then when they go out to their specific buildings, they have checklists that they go through with the case manager. And then they also shadow an individual for a day to learn how to work with a specific student.
Our reflection room is a place where students can come and reflect on their day as a whole, or if they had a certain incident that happened in class, we can work through those. And whether it's taking a calming break or writing an apology, we help students to get back to the classroom and become effective learners.
You come over here and you follow these footprints. You come, pick a quiet place to calm down. You come and sit in one of these beanbags or the floor, and you're able to pick a fidget or a toy that's around this area or a book. You are able to calm your nerves down and be able to do this. When you come over here, there's a hot scotch place, a mat. And you come over here with the tent. You pick something over here and you just sit down or take a book and you sit here. And you come around, you sit here by yourself in this tent or here or the floor. You come and follow these footprints, time to talk about what happened, and you come and talk to one of these teachers.
This room helps students by being able to learn the coping skills that they need to get through the tough times in their school day.
We have a time machine that we utilize when kids are having a peer conflict. It makes them come to an agreement of how they can solve the issue, and so they can recognize how the other person is feeling in a particular situation. So that has helped kids recognize the feelings of others and the struggles and then they each get a time to go over of how they're feeling about the particular situation that brought them to use the time machine.
They help me by calming me down, and they help me solve my problems so I can get back to the classroom to get to learn.
So to start off our presentation, I'm going to start talking about our 504 programs. 504 program is a federal law. It's different from an individual education plan. It is a plan. The top 3 reasons why we have 504s in our districts are ADHD, anxiety, and health-related concerns such as maybe Crohn's disease, diabetic care. And often these they could start from a doctor, it could start from a parent, sometimes it starts from the school. It's really about accommodating a student's needs, but there are no specialized services with this like an IEP. This happens all in the general education setting. So we're developing a plan to help our kids be successful. So we bring family in. There is qualification criteria when a student qualifies. Then we develop a 504 plan as a team, and then we review that annually. This is a look at our current 504 plans. We currently have 195 in our district. 49 were new plans this year, and then we had 40 plans that were discontinued. Some reasons for discontinuation is somebody graduates, they enter special education services, so maybe their needs weren't met by a 504, and so they met criteria for that. Or the other was a lot of students, they might move or left the district. They maybe don't show need. One thing we always want to do is work towards independence in our department. So just like an individual education plan, we're always working on how can we help a student get back to the classroom, as our young lady said. How can we work on transitioning them to independence and eventually leave it? IEPs are not lifelong sentences. 504 plans don't have to be lifelong sentences. How can we support our students, and how can we take that philosophy towards the things that we're doing? Some students will be there and will need those services for a long time, but we can still try to decrease the supports and increase independence. At the end of the year, we do have 106. Some exciting news in 504s is we worked a lot on streamlining our services in student services this year. We are moving from a paper form to Skyward. That is our student information system. So it'll be much more user-friendly for our staff. It's going to reduce the amount of time for our counselors to develop a 504, and it will increase our ability to get information out to teachers. So now teachers will have that document in their student information center, so when they look at a student, they'll see a little icon, they can click on it, it shows a 504 plan. It's very user-friendly, it has a lot of drop-downs, and so what we did is we partnered with some other districts, and we found out, what are some things that they're doing. We took a look at some of the unique needs of St. Cloud and made sure that we could fit in those special accommodations. In addition to that, sometimes when you use a drop-down box, it becomes rigid, like you can only do what's in the drop-down box. We wanted to have some creativity, so we worked with Skyward, and we can also do an upload in there so we can meet the unique needs of some of our students, so we're not just stuck to those drop-down boxes. So we're really excited about that. We can run reports across sites and across districts at the building level and at the district level, and be making a lot of database decisions based on that, and it's going to reduce a lot of staff time as well. The next program we're going to talk about is ADSIS, Alternative Delivery of Specialized Instructional Services. ADSIS is almost like a precursor to special ed. It's an early intervention. It's a tier 2, it's a tier 3 type support. And so we talk about, I feel that we do a lot of things for our tier 1 students, for that 80% of students, 75% of students. We have a lot of stuff that we do in special education once we get to that process. What about those students in between? What about that first grader who's starting to struggle, who's maybe on that route, but they need some support right now? ADSIS is a way to get them services quicker and faster. So this is a funding source through the Department of Education. You have to apply every 2 years to get it. And we focus on K-3 reading intervention. So we have a K-3 reading program, and in this program, we focus on students who are just above the special ed mark, who just barely don't qualify. Is really kind of our target group. And the idea is to reduce or prevent special education referrals. On average, across sites, we set goals, but about 2 to 3 students per year are qualifying for special education. Now, to give you a sense, we're servicing maybe 45 students to 80 students per site, and of that 45 to 80 students, 90 students, only 2 or 3 are actually going into special education. So we're doing a great job of keeping students out of special education, keeping them in the general education, and this program helps do that. We are reimbursed up to about 50% of the costs with that. So our expense on that is about 50% of a 1.0 teacher. We would pay 0.5, and we'd be reimbursed for 0.5 from the state. So there is some funds attached to that, which is really nice for us as well. We had 12 teachers this last year in the ADSIS program, and we do about 3 hours of professional development every month with them. Lori Eckert does an absolutely wonderful job from teaching and learning, and I'm focusing on teaching different strategies to meet individual needs of students. We saw 356 K-3 students, and we had a total of over 700,000 instructional minutes with our students this year. We looked at some trend data this year as well. We wanted to see how are our ADSIS students doing once they leave. So after 3rd grade, how are they performing? Did our early intervention work? Is it just working when they're there, or what's happening? And we tracked their growth 3 years beyond this, and what we saw was that their growth rates were keeping up with their mainstream peers. So this early intervention really is having a high level of success, and we're really excited that we do have an ADSIS program. Here's just a quick chart of some of the growth. We monitor growth weekly. We use multiple indicators. We use STAR data as one of the many indicators that we do use, as well as some other general indicators. You can see the aim line is kind of where we're going, or where we wanted to be, and the trend line is where we're actually performing. So we're overachieving our own goals, which is great, and we're not setting low goals. We're not setting low targets. And you can see the errors down below. We're doing a really nice job with that. The next program is assistive technology. Assistive technology is kind of an umbrella name for two other programs, AIM and Access, and I'll go into those acronyms in a second. So assistive technology is what it really kind of sounds like. It's technology to assist you. I might have a pencil grip. That might be a low-level tech tool that I need to help write. I might have an iPad because I need to access things, and depending on my need, it will depend on what I use. So there's devices and then services. The services are just that, the services. In the picture you can see we have a switch, we have an iPad, we have a pencil grip, some different things that we use with our students. In student services, we think of things as a continuum of services. High tech, mid tech, low tech, high level of services, level 3 programming, setting 2, setting 1. And we want to kind of be moving students off of the high need and trying to move them down as they become more independent. This is just kind of a quick snapshot of assistive technology. Simple, low maintenance things, like a pencil grip would be that low tech device. Using a program like a Schoology program, and then using that to help access voices or text that's read to you, that might be more of a high tech tool. So there's a variety, and based on student need, we respond to that. So inside of this program, we have two. We have AIM, Accessible Educational Materials. And this is really geared towards students who have a hard time accessing print. Students with a learning disability are often included in this area. A little bit of data on how many students use this and how effective it is. We have to offer assistive technology for all students who are on an individual education plan. AIM will also service students who are on a 504 plan, so we do have access with general education students as well. Student Services really works with all students, where special education just focuses with students who have qualified for special education services. So all of my programs usually touch each of those. 90% of 125 students showed improvement comprehension on the Universal Protocol, or we call the UPAR. So you can see a quick snapshot of who is showing growth, and those who are using AIM devices, like a text reader. This might be something like Google Read and Write. This might be something like a program called Bookshare, where other book is online, and then you can use different tools. It reads it to you. I always think of a story. I had a student who was in economics, and the student read at a kindergarten level. And the student was in a senior level economics class, and the student was able to pass the class. You might say, how is that possible? When I first met this student, the student was sitting in a corner in a dark room and just kind of had removed himself from the class. And when I started to get to know the student better, had a huge fascination for social studies and history. Could tell me everything in the world about it, couldn't read a lick, but sure liked the Discovery Channel and sure liked History Channel. And by using devices like this, it allows our kids to access the core content, to meet the standards, and to be successful. So that's a transformational device in action, is that if we can use some of those tools, we can take a student who can't access the content because of their reading ability, and now we can get them access to the content standards to be successful. And our AIM program has had state and national recognition. They do an absolutely wonderful job. We have some very innovative people working there. And we've done a lot of work this year to even clean up some systems and make things faster and more efficient to help kids and our staff. This is another example of how much growth we are seeing in students once they start using a text reader or something like that. In the blue, 29% of students showed between 1 to 2 grade levels of growth by using this. 44% are showing 3 to 4 worth of grade level growth. Now that doesn't mean that they can suddenly read 4 grade levels higher, but that means that they've improved their comprehension because of these assistive devices. And 27% have a 5+ grade level growth on that. The other piece under this is called our Access Team, Augmentative Communication Coaching to Enhance Student Success. I just like to call it Access. It's a tongue twister. This works a lot with our students who are non-speaking or have very limited speech. So while the AIM program is more with those who might have a learning disability, have a difficulty reading, these students oftentimes can't speak, so they might use a switch or some different communication devices. There's an example of the video with a student using a switch on how they would communicate with us. And these are really important. A lot of communication is huge, and if I have a need and I can't express that to you, that's very frustrating as a student. It's very frustrating as a person. If you've ever had a conversation where you explain something to them and they don't get it, and you say it again and they don't get it, and you say it again and you start getting frustrated, well, that's what that student's feeling every single day in their life. And these devices help them communicate with us so they can feel better about coming to school. It's very much a team approach. The family, the whole school, general education, special education, paraprofessional. It could be a vision person, speech pathologist, OTs. This is a huge team, and I think the visual does a really good job of just saying how we wrap around our students with this. All right, school climate. I'm really excited about school climate. This definition comes from the National Climate Center, so I thought I would throw that up there for you. We're doing a lot of work around school climate right now. We went to a conference in Denver, and we met with people across the country at university, other districts. We've been speaking with the district in Austin, Texas. We've been talking with Alaska Anchorage. We've been talking with the Chicago Public School System. We've been working with the Department of Education on all sorts of things around school climate, and we're really excited about some of the work that we're doing. School board member Mose wasn't able to make it, but him and I have had some conversations around school climate, and we're really excited about that community partnership and some things that maybe we can get going there. So thank you, Superintendent Jeff, for allowing that to happen. Appreciate that. Social emotional learning. Here's a quick snapshot of what it is, and I'm trying to keep this concise for you. When we have good social emotional learning, we have good school climate, we see increases in academic achievement. We see increased attitudes of positive attitudes in school. We see decreased behavior problems. We see increasing capacity to learn in our students. And so we really want to make sure we're taking care of that school climate piece. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're doing that. This is a model from CASEL. CASEL is a national agency that works around school climate. We've been working with the Department of Education to write guidance for both professional development, assessment, and implementation of social emotional competencies. They have not been released yet to the public. They will be probably in October after we finish the guidance. And these competencies can help guide us in being intentional about what we're trying to do to support our students. One area is self-awareness. Another is self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision making. I believe you guys have the advanced version where you can kind of see the side pieces, which is kind of why I went through there quickly. I can definitely go back and talk about those more if you would like. But these are kind of the core areas of the competencies. And within these competencies, we have different benchmarks and learning targets to help support our students' learning, give guidance to our teachers and to our district on how we can best do this. Something kind of interesting. CASEL worked on this, and I got this from the University of Columbia. They did a study on, what is the turnaround for investing in SEL? Is it worth it? They, based on their results, for every dollar invested, there was an $11 return. So this came out of Columbia Teaching University, or the College of Teaching at Columbia University, excuse me. And this is what their results came out with in working within that CASEL framework. What you didn't see in that circle was the partnership with family, community, which really is on the outside of that circle, and really having a heavy focus on that. So we're looking to improve that. We're currently partnering with the Minnesota Department of Education. I already spoke about the guidance. We have applied for a positive behavior intervention support grant. We were awarded $60,000 this year as part of a competitive grant to help our work in this area. Given lots of our data, we saw that we had a need for additional Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports like our ADSIS program. And so we're focusing that funding around doing some of those things. We were able to do some national networking. We made all sorts of contacts, working with, we did some work with the University of Oregon. We did some work, like I said, with Austin, Texas. We've been invited even to come out and see some schools to share some resources that they're using around this. A lot of ongoing professional development. This last week, we had almost 200 staff members at the elementary level take place in conscious discipline training. Conscious discipline is a way to work around social emotional learning and school climate. And that was an exciting opportunity that we were able to do. The grant was part of that piece, as well as some other funding that we were able to use. And something that started, I think it really kind of got going this year, was the implementation of the student support rooms. You saw the young lady giving the tour of the room when there is a need where a student is having some type of issue, whether for behavior or some other thing that's going on. They can go to this room. it's a proactive approach to dealing with behaviors. It is not a place to send kids to say, you're going to go down here and take a timeout. That's not what the goal is. And I'll talk about those a little bit more here. These are really exciting spaces, I think. This is a picture of one room. You saw the video of the other. The student support rooms are really around proactive breaks. We ask that every student that comes down there go through the MTSS process. The MTSS process is a place where it's a team where when a child is having some struggles, academic or behavior, we bring that student's name to this team. We talk about how can we best support them. One option might be breaks in the student support room. It is not a place that we want to send somebody for discipline. Rather, it's a place to work on skills and to help teach them skills to be successful in the general education classroom. How do we do that? We do what's called a functional behavioral assessment. In special ed, this is a very large comprehensive process. We have toned it down a little bit to make it realistic in our student support room. So a student comes down, if they're there on a regular basis, they have to have a functional behavioral assessment done, and we have to have a positive behavior intervention plan. And I focus on the word positive. It's not just about discipline, it's about what's causing the behavior. Asking a question, students acting out, well, why do they usually act out? What are the reasons for that? And it's about coaching our staff. Our staff members go to school to be great English teachers, great social studies teachers, amazing science teachers. They don't go to school and have the background to necessarily understand what executive functioning things are happening to a child or why a student with ADHD has executive functioning that is not on par with grade level peers, and they look like they're 2 to 3 years behind, and therefore they act differently. They just haven't had that training, and that's not their fault. They're not experts in that area. So how are we coaching up? How are we teaching them about these things and helping kids be successful? Our positive behavior intervention plans help to do that. It's a set plan to help our kids be successful. It helps our staff understand how to deal with a child and work with a child to help them be successful. So our goal was to we track a lot of data on this, and our goal is to be 75% proactive, 25% reactive. We started out the year very reactive, and that's expected at the beginning. That's what it always is. By the end of the year, some of our sites were beyond the 75% mark. In fact, Carly Johnson, our social emotional learning coordinator, and I just did a presentation at the Minnesota Department of Ed yesterday at the PBIS conference. You always wonder if you're the last session on the last day. You kind of wonder if anybody's going to show up. I expected maybe 5 or 6 people. We had people sitting on the floor. There were so many people trying to answer this question about the work that we're doing. And so this is my end of my first year, but I want to thank you board members for your vision last year in seeing that this was a need and really supporting this, because we're seeing some great work. And I know Carol has talked to other directors around the state, and they hear about some of the things that we're doing, and they're just really excited and asking a lot of questions. So thank you for that opportunity. We are a PBIS district, and so one question we're asking is, how does PBIS fit into SEL and the school climate? How does that all come together? One thing that we're doing with the Department of Ed is we applied for an $800,000 U.S. Department of Education grant together. Another district will be partnering with us as well. They would be Robbinsdale. And we're going to be looking just at that question on how can we do these things. We had a retreat earlier this month to talk about how we can bring all these pieces together, not make it feel like one more thing, but how do we simplify and make this feel good for our staff, make it understandable and easy. And so these are some questions that we're asking right now, and PBS offers a framework for that, and how does that fit with everything else. I just found out yesterday, actually I apologize, 2 days ago, we were awarded another exemplar PBS district, so we just received that award, along with multiple sites. Apollo, Madison, Kennedy, Oak Hill, South Tualahi Tech, and Westwood were all named as PBS exemplar schools. So we continue to do a good job, and largely that measures our Tier 1. We still need to get better at our Tier 2 and our Tier 3, and that's what a lot of our focus is right now. You saw Laura Schulberg up there, who is a teacher on special assignment, and we've worked really hard with human resources to how can we improve our onboarding process and our professional development for our non-licensed staff. Our non-licensed staff, I think, have some of the most difficult jobs. They come in and they're asked to work with some of our most challenging students, and ready, set, go, here we are. And Howard, oh my gosh, I mean, talk about walking out the first day. I can't imagine some of the feelings that they have had. That would be really hard. We decided, what can we do to help that process out? And so now, in addition to the HR orientation process, we offer a half day of professional development after that. So in the morning, they'll work with the human resources. In the afternoon, you saw them sitting in with Laurel Schulberg, and she takes them through an orientation. We also developed a checklist for that new non-licensed staff member, and we gave another checklist to our licensed teachers. So on that first day, there's somebody there to welcome them and say, hey, you know what? Hey, great to see you. Welcome. I mean, it's just nice to walk in and have someone greet you the first day. You've been at the district office. You haven't been at the school yet. Hey, how are you? Where do I put my coat? Where do I have lunch? I mean, some of those basic questions on the first day, those are big questions that our staff want to know. But also, we go deeper. We give them some more professional development. What is in a student's IEP? What are their needs? What are their triggers? We don't put them with a student the first day. They shadow another experienced paraprofessional or non-licensed staff member, and they learn what it is that they need to do. And part of the day, they're supposed to work on reading what's in the plans for the students they'll be working with. They do some observations. They have a chance to meet with the teachers. And so they go through these checklists, and the paraprofessional has to sign off on all the different pieces they do. The case manager or teacher signs off on all the pieces they do, and then they send that back to the district office. So we've really worked really hard to do some of those things. Some examples of our onboarding process for orientation is we do a virtual tour of the district programs. We talk about our 13 disability areas. Roles, responsibilities, expectations, of course. Communication. Now, how are we communicating? How can we do this effectively? What are your legal and ethical duties? Confidentiality is a huge thing. How to work with a student who's in crisis. How to stay safe. How are you doing with your own social and emotional learning? One of the hardest things with staff sometimes is we get upset too. And when we're upset, we're not thinking right. We're not working with our executive functioning. So how do we keep ourselves thinking well? They go through an online program with the Department of Health and Human Services, and they earn a certificate through that. And that covers a lot of the same things that we want them to learn. We talk about technology. What technology skills do you need to work with the students? If we're going to be a 21st century district, we're going to have people with 21st century skills. And if they don't have them, we have to help coach them and get them there. And then again, our onboarding checklist. In addition to this, Laurel goes out and she observes students. So if a case manager says, you know what, we're seeing some concerns, we need some coaching, okay, we're going to coach you up. We're going to get out there, Laurel's going to observe you, give you some feedback, give you some guidance, talk about your strengths. Here's some areas where maybe we can improve. Let me give you some advice. Maybe we can do some role play together. Here's some strategies. Let's try this out. So really trying to support our non-licensed staff members. And I think this is improving with retention. I think this is improving with just our climate for staff. And I think it's just helping us be more successful as a district. In addition to this, we set a goal for all of our non-licensed staff members. This was part of their goal setting, was that they had to work on being safe. They had to work on being safer and reporting being safety. And then we wanted to reduce workplace injuries. We set this goal. And before I even talk about this data, just anecdotally, I had reports from different staff members that say, you know what, I hear our non-licensed staff members talking about safety. They're going into a situation and they're saying, hey, are you doing this? Have you been safe? Have you reported this? And reporting is really important because after we pass so much time after reporting, it kicks into a different section. I won't go into all the details, but it's not very good. We don't want them to do that. We want it reported right away so we can meet the staff members' needs and take care of them. We tracked our data on this and we improved our reporting by 31%. And we reduced all major injuries by 91% this year. We kept people at work, so we reduced lost work time and saved roughly $500,000 as a district by setting this. And this was not just us working on this at all. This was a partnership. Like I said, I'm talking about some of the things that we've done on this. This is a partnership for many of the different people in this room and people who aren't here. Chemical health. We have a chemical health counselor at both Tech and Apollo. It's a .5 position, and you have a chance to see Daniel Ruckert, who is on video there. He's able to work with students who are trying to become sober or are trying to maintain sobriety. And I really look at him as part of that continuum of care again. He's kind of that in-the-building support. We also do have a recovery school, which is over at our ALC, but he is someone who is there to help students transition back from that recovery school to get back to Apollo or Tech. Or if somebody maybe needs more support than we can give them, he is an avenue to connect that person to more resources. Our recovery school is located over at McKinley, and this is for students who are looking for a sober environment. They want a place where they can maintain sobriety. They want to be away from students who are using chemicals, and this is a safe place where we say, you can't be in this program if you are using chemicals, and if you are, you're not in it anymore. So it's a safe place for kids that are who are committed to do this. We open that up to in-district students, but also out-of-district students too. So other districts, because we were kind of the regional hub that don't have so many supports, this is a place for them to come to school as well. We served 15 students in our recovery school this year, and we also served an additional 15 students at our middle schools. We saw some needs at our middle schools. We don't have a chemical health counselor there, but we're able to adjust some things around in order to get some supports over there. In addition, we saw over 120 students at McKinley outside the recovery school. Co-located mental health services. So what that is we partner with Greater Minnesota, and we bring mental health services to our school. That is good for a lot of different reasons. One, you don't have to leave school to get mental health services. That takes 30 minutes to get there, 30 minutes to get back, if you even get back at all. So we're reducing time away from school. Secondly, we're communicating. Mental health is working with our school psych or our social workers to the extent confidentiality will allow us, and we're able to partner and better support students. If I'm working on one strategy at school, the parents are working on another strategy at home, and the mental health counselor is teaching a third strategy, well, we're not working together, and we're making it pretty confusing for that student. Now we can partner with the parents, the outside provider, the school, and we can be teaching students what they need to learn. In addition to that, we have a grant. So for students that don't have insurance to cover that cost, we can cover those costs of insurance. That is not a cost to the district. It does not come out of any district funds. This is an outside grant through the community that covers those costs. So students who couldn't afford that service now can have that here. And this is just an example of some of the different numbers we have. The term emotional disturbance that's the technical term that they use, but it gives you a sense of how many students we serviced. So in the fall, up until the start of the year, we had 237 we serviced, 92 were uninsured, and so that grant would cover costs for them. In the spring to the end of the school year, we had 303 we serviced, and 131 were uninsured, and that we were able to provide funds for. The Collaborative Action Team was another new team, and again, I have to thank the school board for that and your vision in that, because that was something that you were a part of prior to my time. So I walked into it and said, okay, here we go. And it was an exciting team, and you saw some clips from that. We are a wraparound support for schools. We are not a team that comes in and takes over. We don't come and say, we know what we're doing, you don't know what you're doing, and so do it our way. We're a wraparound support. So we come in and say, okay, what have we done? How can we coach up the staff that's there? We don't have the ability to stay there forever and get things done. We have to coach our staff, we have to look at programs, and we have a district expert in many different areas. Mental health, social work, psych, social emotional learning. We have nursing, and I'll get to those in the slide in a second. Here's some of the services that we do this with. We collaborate with the building. We look for outside supports. A lot of our team members are very connected in the community. For example, we have a connection with Clara's House. And Clara's House for some students is a great option, but some of our staff members don't understand how that process works or how to get there. We can't refer directly to them. That has to be done through a doctor, but we can help form connections between people. A lot of times what we find is, like I had mentioned in the co-located services, we have different people trying to work with the student, but they're all doing different things. A lot of things we do is bring people together. We have the conversation. Let's get on the same page, and let's move forward. And we saw really good success with that this year. Here's an example of our team. I sit in that team with a psych, a social worker, mental health, licensed school nurse. We have an occupational therapist on that team. Our health and safety coordinator, Mike Mahachek, sat on this team as well, and he's a huge reason why our safety numbers are what they are. So that partnership with him was huge. And the Collaborative Action Team also was involved with that process. Who do we serve? Basically, we say to a school, if you've tried everything you can in your toolkit and you're out of ideas, that's a reason why you might want to be thinking about us. This might be a student who didn't qualify for special education services. You went through the special ed process, didn't qualify, but you just can't meet the student's needs. What do we do now? That's something that we can help with. You have a student who's in special education all day long. We're giving the maximum services we can. We're still not seeing success. What's next? We're not always looking to send students to another place. My philosophy is I like to try to keep students at their home school to the maximum extent possible. That's not always possible, and I do understand that. But it's still something I go in with. I'm not looking for an outside placement right away. I'm looking at, we exhausted everything first, and can we allow them to stay with their mainstream peers before we consider that? So we help them go through that process and to consider what things that they can do. Sometimes a student just has a traumatic life event, and so schools have a hard time responding to that, and that might be something that we do. We service a total of 34 students this year. 15 of them were general education, and 19 were in special education. Health services. This has been a really exciting group for me to work with this year. Our nurses are a wonderful group of people. And I owe it to them, and they would love it for me to tell you the difference between a licensed school nurse and a health para. Because I think what most of us think about in a school nurse is we think of a health para. That's the person that you visit in the school. They come down, they take your temperature, they call home, say you have a tummy ache, and go home. That's our health para. Who actually, they're all right now, they're all licensed practical nurses, an LPN. And so they are licensed nurses, but our licensed school nurses are RNs. They're a registered nurse. And they are multiple sites. They do things behind the scenes. You don't see them taking the temperatures as often. They still are there doing some of those things, but they do a lot more. They facilitate positive responses and normal development. They work on health and safety. A lot of them are in the community. For example, when we were working with the measles, they were on teams with Centric Care, and we were coordinating with all these different community agencies to make sure that we were partnering in doing best practices and that we were using the same language with our community members. We had 11 nurses this last year, a total of 9.65 FTE, and all of our elementary and secondary sites had them, as well as our non-public sites. They also service homeschool. And then our health paraprofessionals who have LPN licensures are at each of our sites. And those are the ones that you see usually, again, working with the tummy aches, injuries on the playgrounds. That's usually what they work more with. We were able to have 2 float positions this year, which really helps because when our health paras are gone, it puts a huge stress on our front office. When the nurse is out and you have 30, 40, 50 kids coming down there a day, all of a sudden the office secretary is trying to handle that, they're stressed. And when your front office is stressed, your building feels stressed. So we have a float position who can fill in for them when they're gone, and we can still do the status quo. When we onboarded these folks, we had them spend 3 days at each site, and we trained them in on each site, so each of them had an opportunity to do that and feel successful in those situations. And this slide is just for my nurses, just so everyone can see the difference between what a health para might do and what a licensed school nurse might do. Our licensed school nurses are involved in special education assessments, nursing interventions. They do health education. We put up, when we wanted to work on hand washing, for example, because of the measles outbreak that was happening down in the Twin Cities. Okay, so we've got signs in Somali, we've got signs in Spanish, we've got signs in English on how do you wash your hands. One of the best things you can do. They're working on educating staff. They run the health office, so they direct and train our health paras on what to do. Our health paras work more on medication distribution. They work on the direction of our licensed school nurse and do basic medical care. So I gave you a lot of information. I tried to be concise. I know there's a lot of things in student services, so I did try to go quickly. What's next on the horizon? What are we trying to do and where are we going? Each of our areas in student services is developing a 5-year strategic plan that is aligned to the strategic plan that student services did, that is aligned to our strategic plan for the district. So everything is nicely aligned. Everything that we do correlates and is going to help us achieve the goals that we set as a school district. Professional development for our licensed and non-licensed staff, working on core curriculum, instruction, data analysis, evidence-based practices, and fidelity. Not just looking at are we increasing scores, but are we implementing with fidelity? So if I have an intervention I'm trying with a student and they're not showing growth, well, is it because the intervention didn't work, or is it because we need to support the staff more and help coach them more to make that intervention successful? Again, collaboration and always working on engaging our students, families, employees, and community. So, yeah. How did we do, time-wise?
That was fast and a lot of information.
Yep.
Do you have any questions for us regarding the student services part of our department?
I am certain that almost everybody has a question or a comment that they would like to make, and I'm going to start. And then I think I'll start, and then I think Shannon will start with you, and we can just go right on down the board so that I don't have to call on everybody. But every year I watch this or watch you guys present, and it just, I don't know, it makes me, I feel inadequate or something. I'm in awe of all of the different things that you have to deal with, and the individuality of every student and how every student in your department has to be dealt with differently. And the ability that you have to deliver that and to do it. And it's so oftentimes when you're talking to people about education, they'll bring up the private school and they'll say, well, how come it costs them half what it costs public schools to deliver education? And part of that is because they don't do this. They don't deal with the special education. They leave that up to the public schools, and special education is a very, very expensive piece. It's 30% of our budget. It's not 30% of our kids. But thank God we have it, because I would hate to look at our community if we weren't reaching that group of students the way that we do, keeping them in school. I mean, if we just let those kids go and we don't deliver that individualized education to them, they're going to be out on the streets and they're going to cause a lot of problems down the road. But by delivering individualized education, we can keep them focused and occupied and hopefully make good people out of troubled students. And to me, it's just incredible what we do and how much we do, and I'm so glad that I don't have to do it, because I don't think that I could get my mind around all of the things that we do. I don't know how you guys do it. So that's my comment. Shannon?
I just have two questions. One is, with the measles outbreak, there was an email once that came through talking about the possibility of get immunizations at school. Would that ever be possible to have the school district to do immunizations on site? Do we do that?
Yep, I can answer that. We are having conversations with CentraCare. There are a lot of logistical challenges. We've expressed interest in exploring it, and so have they, but it'll be challenging to make that a reality just because of some of the rules around vaccinations and the refrigerations and the units and things. That becomes very challenging. So we're continuing to try to explore those ways on how can we best get services to our community where they feel safe and they feel welcome and feel good about that. And so, yes, we thought that the school might be a good place. We're still in conversations to see if that would ever become a reality.
Then my other question was, in this return on investment, the $1 versus $11, do you know more specifics on how that was measured? Are you talking about within the school district itself, $1 at the early level is a return on versus the $11, or is that as an adult, or how is that measured?
I did not do the study personally, so I can't speak to all the details, but I will speak to it to the best that I can. The idea is in terms of if you think about a student who gets social emotional learning competencies, you invest in your staff, you invest in your students. The return on that, the $11 comes where if I was not doing that, and the extra things I would have to be doing later to try to support that student. If, for example, a good analogy I think is intervening early. Intervene early, you see results and things are better down the road. Same thing kind of with this. If we're intervening, we're teaching those competencies early on, and we're supporting our kids, we're going to see stronger students down the road.
Jeff?
3 or 4 things. Does the school district have navigators? Health insurance navigators? Kids are in school, they don't have insurance. How do they get insurance while they're in school? Anyone in the school trained to fill out the MNsure forms, all that kind of stuff? Or is that just outsourced?
We don't have that access in our department. I'm not sure if anybody else is familiar with that, but we don't have the navigators.
Is that a conversation you want to have later on with me, and I'll tell you some neat ideas? Definitely a financial decision. It's very good cost saving. Second thing, my wife's a school nurse. Actually, I better correct myself. My wife's a health professional, LPN. She does way more than boo-boos on the playground. Just, okay. Just wanted you to know I had to say that or I'd catch on when I got home. And then how about public health? Have you guys hit up Stearns County Public Health for the immunizations?
Yep, we have been partnering with them. In fact, we did a community outreach. We did one at Talahi and we did one at North, and public health was there and did speak and partnered with us in that presentation about immunizations and about measles.
Were they allowed to do them, or is that still kind of lots of rules?
Were they allowed to do immunizations?
Yeah.
No, it was just informational, and then there's a presentation and a Q&A session for people to ask questions and learn about it. But no, we haven't done any immunizations like that on site.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Al.
Gary?
Well, here's a question that could be answered at another meeting, because you've been talking about a ton of things that you do, and it's very impressive. Last year, we had a really fine presentation on dyslexia, and the legislature has imposed some considerable new requirements depending on which research you believe. That's 10 to 20% of the students, some of whom are special ed, some of whom are 504, some of whom don't qualify for either but still need help. We heard about the beginnings of work at Madison, and it would be neat to hear, because these are a ton of students that can really get help if we're geared up, but it's also a huge undertaking to do something that's not really been done in Minnesota and certainly not here. And so I would be interested in hearing, not tonight, but unless you want to say something, I think it'd be great to hear. Where have we come from where we were last year, and what do we need to do to get to where we want to be?
I knew you might have a little bit of interest in this, so I asked, actually when I was at the department yesterday, what the latest and greatest was going on in dyslexia, and they shared with me guidance that they have written with a bunch of dyslexia experts, and I can share that document with you. I've not had a chance to preview it yet, so I'm sorry I can't speak to it, but I just got kind of a quick and dirty.
Super. And really, I wouldn't have expected an answer, but I'm just in terms of another service to add to your services, and the challenge that the legislature has rightly imposed. So some other time, I think it would be great for the board to hear when you're ready to do that.
And just for the board to know too, so we have a great district team working on dyslexia committee made up of special educators and general educators in teaching and learning as well to support that, and they have come up with some really great ideas of how to support students across the district, so we're pretty excited about what's coming forward.
Thank you.
Bruce.
So Carol and Jeff, I want to praise you and your staff. I want to start out by saying I want to praise your staff and all those that are not yet here today, and both of you. Praise your programs and your services. I want to do that in a couple of reflections. I want to return to the nursing thing for a moment. 65 years ago, I was an 8-year-old second grader at Lincoln, and there was a 36-year-old school nurse at Lincoln 65 years ago, and she'd always choose me when it came time for vaccinations or health demonstrations. She always chose me inexplicably, I don't know, at the time, and I would come up there and nothing was rehearsed, but I knew that I had to do well in that scenario. because every night when I went home, that 36-year-old nurse was living in the same house I was. That was my mother. That 101-year-old nurse today still lives with me. I'm her caregiver. I value school nurses. I say that 65 years ago, they were school nurses. Of course, they were health professionals then too, but that was it. That is an incredible group of people that you have working with our students every day. But that's matched by every single other professional and paraprofessional in your department with all of these programs and services that you do. So the second way I'm praising you is to say it this way. I spent 32 years on a high school faculty. I taught advanced placement, honors, accelerated students. I co-taught and co-teaching programs with high achievement mathematics and physics and chemistry students. I was involved in creative teaching with art teachers, social studies teachers, English teachers. I was tagged, hired to work in that area. That's what the people said was my skill set, and I really enjoyed that work. But I also taught some sections of biology for students that in that day, that long ago, they were called slow-paced sections. And they were our special education students. That was the greatest challenge I had in my lifetime, working with those students to meet their needs. And I worked with the teacher that came with them to the classroom, special education teacher that came with them. Those teachers in those departments were my best friends. I hung out with the special education teachers, not the chemistry teachers, not the physics teachers, certainly not the math teachers. They were far less interesting than the people that were doing miraculous work. And now I'm on the Board of Education for nearly 14 years, and I am humbled and I am sometimes, as my colleague Al said, I'm overwhelmed by what you're describing to us and what your staff is doing. My God, this is incredible work. Don't let anybody in this community ever tell Bruce Mose that they know something about special ed or they have an opinion about special ed or the monies or the programs or whatever. I'll just remind them that that's only an opinion. It's not a very well-informed opinion. If you want informed opinions, go to these people. Go to the superintendent. Go to our directors. Get the information that you need to make the judgments and decisions you're making. And for crying out loud, in our state legislature, sure would like to drag those folks in here and let them hear this and let them become educated and informed about what's going on and how they could be useful members of the community as elected representatives, making decisions that we all have to make here. We're doing great, great things with far less than we need. But that's what we do. That's what you do. And then we get to listen to it, and you help us make good governance decisions. Jeff, I'm sorry I couldn't make that day with you. That was on my list to do. Wish I'd have been there that day. I'll talk a little bit about that during my committee report later on. But thank you very much.
Monica.
Thank you for the presentation. I was very impressed. I'm particularly impressed with the support that you're giving to your non-licensed staff. Really kudos for that. I have a question about, you said in your presentation that in PBIS you were doing tiers 1 and 2 and 3, and that you were good in one and working in 2 and 3. Could you talk a little bit more about that? And also that the grant, the PBIS grant that you mentioned here was awarded already, or we are still waiting? That is mostly used in professional development?
So there's a few ways that we can measure this. We try to use multiple data points to look at this. An easy one to use is we use something called a tiered fidelity inventory, or TFI. And what we do is when we administer that, we're looking for a score of 70% in order to consider that doing a really good job in an area. And we looked at our tier 1 after that assessment, we were about 75%. So our scores were really good on that. And a lot of our office discipline referrals and suspension data would support that as well. When we take a look at our tier 2 and our tier 3, our TFI scores were around 54 and 56% respectively, which told us there might be something going on there. So we took a look at our ODRs, we took a look at our student support room data, we took a look at other indicators and said, yeah, you know what, I think this is a place where we could use some need. So for the PBIS competitive grant, we actually focused around that, and we said, you know, we want to continue our work in tier 1, but we want to really focus in on tier 2 and tier 3. And professional development is largely what the whole $60,000 is going through. The conscious discipline training was a piece. We were looking at doing some of that. The funding didn't become available till about February, but they said that they were looking at potentially extending it, and they did open it up to extend that into the next school year. And so we did apply to have that grant extended, and so we will carry over those dollars for the next fiscal year.
And just one follow-up. When we're talking about PBIS, we are not talking about, we're talking about all the student population, are we?
Yep.
My turn. Thank you, Carol and Jeff, for that presentation. And it was very educational, almost overwhelming, and you only talked about half of your department. You didn't even talk about special education tonight. It was about the student support services. That it's amazing the programs that we provide for students. And I also understand better why we need to have the department somewhat divided and to have someone like Jeff on board, who obviously has a great background and did a great job explaining what you are, what efforts you're leading there. One of the things that struck me as you were talking is we may need to revisit our district mission statement, I was thinking, because it says that we prepare, engage, educate, empower, and inspire students, but we also support them. In fact, we really do quite a bit of work, apparently, in supporting students, and we might want to consider the next time we update our mission statement to include some reference to that. Then some of these programs that you discussed tonight are relatively new, some of them quite new, and things like chemical counselors, which we didn't have, that we had a long time ago and then didn't have, but now recently have again, mental health professionals, supports in our schools. I guess my question would be, as we look at next year's budget, do we find all these programs intact in these interventions and supports?
We do. Our reductions for next year, so we did a combination of some classroom teachers and some administrators. And so the programs that you see tonight will still be intact as we move forward. And our goal moving forward is not to add more. We don't want to go wider. We want to go deeper and really do these programs with great fidelity, implement well, have great fidelity, and move things forward for kids. It's our goal.
And then my last question is homeless students. Do they fall under your department?
They used to. And so right now, Pat King in title, when we meet, Bruce, obviously you know that Pat is there as well. And so we partner around it. And so Pat and I have conversations. And for example, Barb Wagner's position as a social worker comes out of my department and soon will be under title as Barb will be retiring in November.
Yeah.
but, so we partner currently around the ideas, but Pat handles the majority of the supervision of the homeless program at this time.
Okay, so that's where it is. It's under the title department. Okay. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you for presenting. I think we're going to move on. Oh, Willie has a comment, but we're going to move on as soon as Willie is done so that we can get the meeting over before
11. We'll make this brief. When I look out in the audience and I see the staff that's sitting there, Bruce Mose, you made a comment saying if somebody wants to understand something, contact the superintendent to get an informed answer. As it relates to this, or the topic that was discussed this evening, I've heard the term overwhelmed. It's a term or it's a topic or it's a department that at times the department doesn't give me a headache, but everything that they do, in terms of it's so complex. It's intricate, it's complex, there's so many different moving parts, but yet it's integral. It's an integral part of our district. I look at our mission statement and I go through it and I get to the last sentence. And it's talking about to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. And I'm looking at our students when we're in school, and this department supports that mission in terms of helping these students that enlist all the help of this department so that the students can be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. So I think everybody at this table is saying thank you for all that you do. You get those wonderful letters every blue moon from parents or teachers or students that share that with you. I don't believe you get enough accolades, not just you sitting here, but all the teachers and all those people that support those students. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you. And now, before we move on to the summary of the June work session and preview of the July work session, I have a confession and an apology to make. I made changes at the beginning of the meeting to move an action item to in front of this presentation, and we never acted on it. So we still need to do that, so I'm going to move it right back into the slot it was supposed to be on. We just won't have the discussion before it. So right now we're going to do the summary of the June work session and the preview of the July work session. And that would be Marcia.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, and members of the board. The June work session had a number of topics, the first being the New Tech High School update. David Leopold, architect with IIW Minnesota, John Pfluger, architect with the Cunningham Group, along with other project consultants, presented an update on the progress since the last work session. Mr. Leopold reported that the technical evaluation panel had approved the permit applications and agreed that we have a very good design and are addressing the wetland concerns appropriately. The permitting approval process will continue to move forward. John Pfluger reviewed the sustainability goals set by the community, which include environmental education, indoor environmental quality, and resource efficiency. He also reviewed the floor plans, the exterior development of the building, the main entry design options, and the site plan. Dan Folsom of Design Tree Engineering provided information on stormwater management, including the grading plan and paved drain system, and Andy Faulkner, ICS Consulting Manager, reviewed changes that were made to the bid packages resulting in benefits relating to the site work. The other items on the agenda included the budget presentation by Amy Scalarud, Interim Executive Director of Business Services. We then moved into a variety or various board policies, the first being 506, and Carol Potter, Executive Director of Students Services for Special Education, presented and reviewed the proposal for the revision of Board Policy 506. That will be brought back to the next work session for its second reading. The next was new Board Policy 806, which was presented by Gary Ganji, Executive Director of Technology and Support Services. And that policy has to do with crisis management. This replaces the current policy 803, as well as Administrative Procedures 516.3 and Board Policy 516.3. Next, Tracy Flynn Bowe, Executive Director of Human Resources, presented the new proposed policy, Board Policy for 421, Gifts to Employees and School Board Members, for a first reading. Tracy also presented Board Policy 422, Policies Incorporated by Reference, for a first reading, and Joni Olson, Executive Director of Student Achievement and Strategic Alignment, presented Board Policy 523, Policies Incorporated by References, for a first reading. Those are being reviewed tonight for second readings. The July work session on the agenda so far is the new Tech High School update, proposed revised Board Policy 506, as I stated earlier, for the second reading, proposed new Policy 534, which are unpaid meal charges, and then a closed negotiation strategy session. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will move into discussion and action items, and the first item is the Minnesota State High School League membership renewal. The administration recommends approval of membership renewal in the Minnesota State High School League for 2017-2018. I'm looking for a motion.
I would make that motion.
I'd like to second that motion.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? Seeing no discussion, Mr. Mose, would you call roll?
Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Jerry Van Korf.
Yes.
Jeff Pulreis.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Thank you. Next, we move into the proposed. Hang on a second here. No, we're moving into the proposed and new and revised board policies for the second reading. Board Policy 421, I believe that's Tracy. And
yes, good evening, board members, Superintendent Jett. I've got Board Policy 421 for a second reading. You have that in your packet. I'll just review some of the changes that you recommended last time that were made to the draft that you're currently viewing. So we talked last time about the ordering of sections and how it could be more clear if those sections were reorganized. And so that has happened. So Section 1, Purpose, Section 2, General Statement of the Policy are the same. We moved the definition sections up to Section 3 and indicated specifically that those definitions apply to Section 2 of the policy where we're talking about school officials. Section 4 of the policy has been just retitled to say gifts to school officials from interested persons, vendors, and providers. Again, to give us that clarity that when we're talking about that statutory requirements, it's applying to those designated individuals. And then we relabeled Section 4 to say gifts to other school employees to clarify that. We also added a sentence at the end to get at, I think it was your suggestion, Mr. Dahlgren, to make sure that when these gifts are offered that there wouldn't be any quid pro quo there. And so we added a sentence to the end saying that gifts may not be given or accepted under this provision if the gift is given with the intent to influence a decision relating to a student's participation in the academic or extracurricular programs of the district. Any questions about those changes or about the policy?
I thought you did a very good job of cleaning it up, and I think it says what we want it to say from my reading anyway.
Okay. While I'm here, I've got the second reading of 422. There's nothing in that one, so I'll just take questions if anybody has anything. That was just the incorporation of policies by reference. I don't think there were any changes to that since last time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Gary?
Good evening. This is the second reading of Board Policy 806 to replace Policy 803. There were no changes made from the first reading to the second reading, but I'm open to questions.
Doesn't look like there are any questions. Okay. And I believe that let's see, 523.
Good evening. I'm here for a second reading on Board Policy 523. This again is a reference by incorporation, and there are no changes from the first reading. Any questions?
Any questions on that? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
So that concludes the second reading of the board policies, and next we will move into the approval of the 2016-17 revised budget, and this is an action item. Amy Scalarud, Controller, or no, I'm sorry, not Controller, Director of Business Services, Interim.
Oh, this is what you need? Oh, yeah, it's in there.
Okay. Okay, we're good. Arrows, okay.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, Superintendent Jett, members of the board. I have two presentations tonight. The first is the revision of the 2016-2017 budget. You will see on the screen the original 2016-17 budgets that were approved by the board last spring, the adjustments to that budget, and the final revised 16-17 budget amounts that you are approving this evening. The first page that we have in front of us is the revenue budget. You'll see that the majority of the funds do not show any budget adjustments from the original to the revised. The general fund does have a decrease in the revenue budget of just over $1 million. I do want to point out that there's a lot that can happen in any given year within a fund, and so there's a number of things that are offsetting each other that kind of net out to that $1 million, and so I'll just kind of briefly go over what those items are. Truly, the actual revenue available for operating is more accurately reflected as a decrease of $3.8 million. The rest of that decrease has some expenditure offsets that we'll talk about. So there's two big things that are playing into what the true revenue decrease would be without those expenditure offset items. And those are directly related to our decrease in enrollment in the given year, as well as changes in the special education revenue formula that caps revenue growth from one year to another. What's offsetting that is two items. There was a new accounting standard issued last year to account for pension aid for TRA that requires us to book a portion of the state TRA pension liability on our books. That results in a revenue of $1.5 million. However, there's a corresponding expense for $1.5 million as well. It doesn't affect the bottom line activity, but it does falsely kind of understate this adjustment. That $1.5 million pension adjustment wasn't known at the time that the original budget was brought forward last year, and so that is part of why you see a smaller decrease than what we would be expecting based on the enrollment conversations that we've been having. Also in there are some increases in revenue with corresponding expenditure increases for a number of grants. So when we formulate the original budget, we do our best to determine what our federal and state grant amounts are going to be. However, every year those numbers can fluctuate up or down. And for this year, we actually received more in federal grants than what was budgeted. And so that is part of that revenue adjustment as well. Moving on to the other funds for revenue, Food service fund, you'll see a revenue adjustment that is directly related to our fresh fruit and vegetable program grant. We never know from year to year if we're going to receive those fundings, that funding, and you'll see when we go to the next slide that there's a corresponding expenditure increase for that exact amount. Building construction fund is a significant budget adjustment from what the original budget was put forward for approval, and that is the bond proceeds that were issued for both the Quarry View Early Childhood Center as well as the Tech High School project. And then the last fund that has an adjustment there on the revenue side is the trust fund, and there will be a expenditure revision on that fund as well. The trust fund accounts for our scholarship activity during the year, and so we estimate what that is going to be. However, we never know in any given year how much money is going to come in and be paid out in scholarships.
So Amy, before you go on any, I just want to make one point to basically to the public who's watching on TV, that this is really the fourth time that you've covered this with members of the board. We had it at a workshop for the full board. It's also been presented at the Finance Committee, and it's been presented at the Community Finance Committee. And there were lots and lots and lots of questions that were asked at those meetings, and so the board has done its due diligence on this. So if we sit here and we aren't asking questions and challenging you on a lot of things, it's because we've already done so. So this is really, it's a presentation to the public of the work that we've done up to this point and the work that you've done up to this point.
Correct.
And then our opportunity to approve the budget at the end.
Correct. Going on to the next slide, this is the revisions in the expenditure budget. You'll see that the expenditures in the general fund are increasing by 2.7 million. Again, 1.5 million of that is that pension, that state TRA pension adjustment that has the offsetting revenue that were required by accounting standards to book. There's no cash flow in or out that relates to this. It's really truly just a required accounting adjustment. And then the rest of that increase is going to be, again, those state and federal grants that we talked about on the revenue side, the largest of that being the EL preschool legislative grant that we received this year. That was one that wasn't known at the time that the original budget was put forward, as well as some increases in special education, federal funding, title funding, and other programs. Operating capital, there is a budget adjustment for the year of $1.4 million increase in expenditures. There's two large items that make up the bulk of this. Those were the projects for the new Kennedy Road entrance and the relocation of the tennis courts at Discovery to accommodate the early childhood building. And then the rest of that difference relates to what we call carryover, particularly in capital. The capital fund is used to purchase larger items, and so oftentimes buildings or departments kind of build up those monies if they need a larger item like a copy machine or something that they can't accommodate within a current year's available budget. They'll build that up, and we roll that forward from year to year, and so that's part of what you see as the increase there. In the other funds, food service, again, that's that exact same amount from the revenue side for the fresh fruit and vegetable program grant. Community services, community education has some pretty substantial fund balances, and so there were some adjustments during the year for one-time costs, supplies, and building improvements at the Midtown Square location to spend down some of that fund balance. On the debt service, on the building construction fund, this is the current year amounts that are that were a budget adjustment for the Quarry View and the Tech projects based on what we anticipate to spend through June 30th, as well as the bond issuance costs that relate to those proceeds that we saw in the revenue side. And then again, the trust fund is just the change in the scholarship activity. So this page puts kind of it all in a summary that shows how these adjustments affect to fund balance. You'll see that most of the funds, we're not going to see significant changes. The general fund is where we'll focus our attention here. If you look at that general unrestricted line, Fund balance as of July 1st, 2016 was just over $13.7 million. When we factor in the revisions for this year's current activity, projected fund balance at the end of, for unrestricted fund balance at June 30th, 2017 is $7,394,741. $2.5 million of this was a planned spend down of fund balance. The budget that was approved by the board last spring reflected a spending of fund balance for some one-time costs, with the bulk of that being technology for the one-to-one program, textbooks, and other related items. And then the remainder of that decrease, the $3.8 million, is going to be from the two items that we discussed previously, the decline in enrollment, as well as the revenue, with the special education revenue being adjusted for the fact that there's a cap from year to year. Are there any questions on the 2016-17 revised budget?
Yeah. I don't have a question, but I have a comment, and I'd be amiss if I didn't say it. As a newly elected board, I chair the finance committee. I met with Kevin many a time, tapped his expertise to get my learning curve up. When he left, I want to commend you, Amy. You stepped in. It's been seamless. I really want to thank you for your work.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, the budget process isn't an easy one. It started a long time ago, and it involved every single department in the school system as well as Willie. And you yourself, you've been working some long days and long nights. And yes, we appreciate it. It's a great job, and it's great to have someone that can step in and really do a seamless integration.
Thank you.
If there are no more comments or questions, I'm looking for a motion to approve the 16-17.
I'll make that motion now.
16-17.
With the change of the cover then?
There's two different ones.
Oh, okay. So we're looking at 2016-17 budget.
Yep.
I'll make the motion now.
We have a motion. Do we have seconds? We have a second. Bruce. So, Mr. Moses, you call roll.
Jeff Pulrice.
Yes.
Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Paul Dahlgren.
Yes.
Bruce Mose. Yes.
And so now the next item on the agenda is the 2017-18 budget. And again, just as with the 16-17 revised budget, I want to reiterate what Chair Dahlgren had said, that the board has reviewed this as well as the Finance Committee and the Community Finance Study Group. So the first slide that you have in front of you is the summary of the general fund. The general fund is subdivided into three funds: the operating fund, transportation fund, and then operating capital, which is really accounting for technology or other long-term capitalizable items, things that are not consumable, that have a useful life that goes beyond 1 year, as well as construction-related projects can also come out of the operating capital fund. So for the general operating fund, you'll see the third from the bottom line there, excess of revenues under expenditures for 2017-18 is $447,742 negative. The reason that we have a negative for the budget for 2017-18 is due to the fact that the levy that was certified last fall included a one-time negative levy adjustment for a county TIF adjustment. And so in a year where we were already looking at declining revenue or declining enrollment and making some reductions there, the thought was to not cut back programming for a one-time sort of revenue loss. Transportation fund is anticipating a positive budget for the year of $16,592, and operating capital again has a positive balance of $43,539. Next page is the special revenue funds, which is the food service and the community education fund. Food service fund, typically the goal of that fund every year is to operate at a break even. And so you'll see that we are anticipating $3,520 positive variance there. Community education, which is similar to what we've seen with the 2016-17 revised budget, is projecting a negative in the budget you see in front of you of just over $37,000. However, community ed is currently undergoing some restructuring and some analysis and some review of programs and things that are going on there. And so we would anticipate that budget deficit will be amended, and an amended budget will be brought forward at some point to remove that deficit. The next budget is the Capital Projects Fund. The presentation on the next few funds is a little bit different. It shows more of a historical perspective so that you can kind of see some of the large spending items. It's a little bit clearer if we look at this fund with 16-17 together with 17-18. You'll see, as we discussed previously, a large bond proceed amount, a large revenue amount that came in 2016-17 for the bonds that were issued for Quarry View and the Tech High School projects. And so the 17-18 budget, the bulk of the budget in this fund, just under $47 million, is the anticipated spend for the year for those two projects. The remainder of the expenditures in this fund on the alternative facilities line of $7.6 million is the remaining spend down of the Apollo HVAC project that's currently ongoing, and that will complete fully in the next fiscal year 18-19. Debt service fund for 2017-18, you'll see revenues are increasing, and that is directly related to the new bond for the Tech High School project. Expenditures are in theory also increasing, although it's a little hard to look at that in this presentation because in 2015-16 there were bonds issued to refund the Kennedy issuance, and so at the end of 2015-16 those refunding bonds were sitting there in fund balance, but the old bond hadn't been repaid, so we really had both sitting on the books at the same time, and so the repayment of that shows up in the 2016-17 activity, so it's a little bit harder in this fund to look at from year to year. The expendable trust fund, again, this is the fund that we use to account for our scholarship activity, and we never really exactly know how much that's going to end up being in and out every year. That can fluctuate, and so that is just a balanced budget. We anticipate no change in fund balance based on the information that we know at this time. And then the last three funds are the internal service funds. The first of those is the OPEB trust fund, and you'll see the change in net position for 2017-18 is $611,470, and that is a decrease. And what that is the amount of our annual OPEB transfer that we can transfer from this fund into the health insurance internal service fund. The dental insurance internal service fund, anticipating about a $5,000 positive variance for next year. That fund has a rather healthy fund balance based on the amount of annual expenditures, so we're not anticipating a lot of change in activity for that fund. It's generally pretty consistent from year over year. And then the health insurance internal service fund, the expected change in net position is 0. You'll see right now that it shows a negative net position at the end of the year. If you refer back to that OPEB trust fund, you'll see there's a fairly substantial amount of money sitting in that trust fund that we have the ability to transfer some of that at the end of the current fiscal year into the health insurance internal service fund to cover where we expect our plan deficit to be at the end of this year. The budget that you see in front of you doesn't reflect that transfer since no final decisions have been made yet in terms of what that amount will be. But that is the intention, so just so that you're aware that deficit, the intention is to take care of that deficit. Are there any questions on the 2017-18 budget?
Thank you, Amy. If there are no questions, then the administration recommends approval of the 2017-2018 budget. I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
We have a motion, a second? And a second. Mr. Mose, would you call roll?
Ooh, I wanted to say one.
okay.
I wanted to say one thing. Mr. Mose is fond of saying he's been here for 14 years. I just think it's time to remind ourselves how different this budgetary environment is from what we and the boards in that time period faced. Whenever there was a little bit of glitch in the predictions of revenue or expenses, because the board had no fund balance, because the legislature was not providing a whole lot of money, we were constantly on the edge of solving that problem by raising class size. And there were people back in that time that said that we would never be able to maintain the class sizes that we established in what was it, 2004, but we've managed to improve upon those. The other piece of it is that this year at the legislature, there were two branches of government arguing over whether we would get the budget that we got or one substantially lower. And if the people the branch of government that advocated for lower had gotten their way, we would be sitting here looking at a number of excruciatingly difficult cuts. And so I'm always passing things off to the legislative committee, but it's just absolutely critical. And it'd almost have been interesting to do a trial budget as to what it would have looked like if the folks who were advocating for what they were advocating. And if we ever get both branches of the government advocating that same cut budget, the kudos that we've been giving ourselves for providing the services that we need to provide, I mean, the process will look very, very different.
Mr. Chair, so Mr. Von Korf, you're really right in that, you are correct in that recollection, and I must say here publicly that you led that charge. Mr. Von Korf, you led that charge back then to open this process up and make it more transparent. Remember when we went down to the Capitol, we went down and visited the state senator and the state representative at that time. I know the clock is running, but this is worth saying. And we were politely excused out of their offices, weren't we? They didn't have much to talk to us at that time about. And we were frustrated. But you really were persistent, Jerry. Dog on a bone sort of personality at that time. And we are all the better for it in this district. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Mr. Mose, would you call roll?
Bruce Mose, yes. Second of the motion, Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Jeff Pulrice.
Yes.
Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Monica Segura Shorts.
Yes.
And Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Thank you. Next is school lunch prices, 2017-2018. The administration recommends approval of an increase in student and adult lunch prices by 5 cents for the 2017-18 school year. Amy Scalarud will present.
How do I get it back so I can put the handout? How do I get it back to this? Oh, the overhead? Yeah. Aha, okay. So you have in your packet a comparison of our current lunch prices and our proposed 2017-18 lunch prices, as well as those of some neighboring districts or some like-sized districts. There is a requirement that school districts have to do what is called a paid lunch equity calculator. Essentially what they want to make sure is that we're not keeping our paid lunches at a price that's essentially being subsidized by the free and reduced lunch price. And so the state has what they consider a minimum that you're supposed to charge for paid lunches, and if you're not at that minimum, you need to explain what revenue you're using to support not increasing it to that minimum, or at a minimum, you need to increase your cost by 10 cents per year. So currently, that state minimum paid lunch price is $2.85. You'll see for 2016-17, our current prices are at $2.60 for elementary, $2.80 for secondary, and then $3.95 for adult lunches. So what we're proposing for next year is a 5-cent increase that gets the secondary up to the $2.85. Our average is still less than that. However, the state does provide some state funding for all paid lunches, and so we're able to use that to not have to do the full 10-cent increase, just to kind of help with our families and to keep us comparable to other districts. So what we're proposing is the 5-cent increase for elementary, secondary, and adult lunch, no price change for breakfast or additional milk.
Shannon.
The reduced meals, is that price changing?
No, this is just the full paid price.
Okay.
I move approval.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If there is no further discussion, Mr. Moser, would you call roll?
Jerry Von Korf.
Yes.
Monica Seguda Schwartz.
Yes.
Bruce Henches.
Yes.
Bruce Mose, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Shannon Hawes.
Yes.
Jeff Pulrice.
Yes.
Thank you, Amy. Next is the superintendent's report. Mr. Willie Jett.
Good evening, Chair Dahlgren, members of the board. For my superintendent's report this evening, 3 things to cover. First, St. Cloud Area School District was recently certified by Points of Light as a nationally recognized service enterprise. A service enterprise is an organization that fundamentally leverages volunteers and their skills throughout their organizations to successfully deliver on its social mission. District 742 is the first school district in Minnesota to receive certification and one of 2 districts nationally to achieve service enterprise certification. Second, congratulations to Tech High School students Drew Erickson, Alexis Handley, Madison Leaders, and Georgina Simon, who participated in the 2017 Hennepin Theater Spotlight Education Showcase at the State Theater in Minneapolis. They were selected through a formal evaluation process and honored for their outstanding work in their roles in Tech's fall musical, Seussical. The showcase featured more than 1,400 students from 86 high schools across Minnesota. The theme for the show was A Place to Call Home, celebrating the theater as a place where students can connect, grow, create, and learn lifelong skills that make a positive impact in our community. And lastly, congratulations to Tech High School's Trevor Koenig. And you can't miss who Trevor is if he were to walk through this door. He's about 6'10" to 7 feet tall. Anyways, Trevor was recently drafted by Major League Baseball's Milwaukee Brewers. And that concludes my superintendent's report. Yes.
Next is the Board Development Policy and Governance Committee. Shannon Hawes, Chair.
We have not met since the last time that we were here, so I have nothing to report. We meet next Tuesday.
Community Linkage and Engagement Committee, Bruce Mose.
Community Linkage Committee did not meet in June. We meet at our regular meeting times in July and August. On our agenda in July, we will invite Jeff Horton to come and present to us on some of the elements that he talked about this evening, community or district climate and culture and items of that importance to us. Also then in July, we will have Melissa Hansvick-Brill that will come and talk to us about the collaboration between SCSU, Association of University Women, and the school district on Math Smart. And we're looking forward to that presentation. Mr. Chair, you said at the beginning of the year that you kind of wanted this mission or this purpose of this committee to be broadened out a little bit and to put a little more emphasis on engagement, community engagement, not just on the linkage part. And so I'd like to take some time here this evening to talk about 3 engagement pieces that are occurring now and have recently occurred that I think meet the spirit of what you were asking us to consider. I want to go back to last Friday evening. One of our community partners, Promise Neighborhood, an award winner in our Partners in Education program, was a co-sponsor and organizer for the Juneteenth celebration. And so if you were there that evening, it was again, the weather made a difference, but it was a spirited engagement, and every time that any of us are able to be there, that sort of meets what you were asking us all to do as board members, is to be out and about. And so I think that that falls quite properly into a community linkage and engagement report with one of our district partners, Promise Neighborhood. We've also been a partner in the school district with an organization, LEAF, Local Education Activities Foundation. They are a previous Partner in Education award winner. And tomorrow night out at Whitney Park is the Liberty Block Party. And all persons on this board and in this room are certainly invited to go there as your time permits. That would be a great way for us to engage in an effort in this community to raise money, much of it or all of it, which comes back in many generous ways to this school district. One of the major sponsors of that event tomorrow night, Liberty Bank, has also agreed to provide for a booth in which all sales that are done at that booth of T-shirts and other items and that are taking place, and a significant part of the revenue of that evening is going to come to LEAF. That's the first time that's been done. LEAF is going to profit handsomely tomorrow night by that association with Liberty Bank. And LEAF is a partner of the school district. And so all of us, or any of us that show up tomorrow night at Liberty Bank, at the Liberty Block Party, sponsored by Liberty Bank and LEAF, will be able to claim to be an engaged person in this community. Also want to mention then that another award-winning organization in the past with our partners in education is the Tech High School Alumni Association. They were one of our early awardees in this room, back when we had those events in this room. And Tech High School Alumni Association is putting on the 2017 Tech Centennial Celebration. That's taking place all through this year. It's a good reminder and a good notation that for all of us, or any of us that are taking part in these items, that we are meeting the spirit, Mr. Chair, of what you reminded us to be engaged in things in our community. So there's an opportunity of engagement for all of us this summer. I know something about this partnership, this celebration. Along with other members of the Alumni Association, I'm chairing this effort. I want to mention the names: Bruce Mose, Raleigh Carlson, Phil Rogaszewski, Peg Carlson, Bruce Henches, Charlie Eisenreich, Jim Dahl, and Don Watkins are steering this thing from the beginning to the end. It's worth to note, if we are talking about engagement in a event that it reflects upon this school district and one of our flagship schools, St. Cloud Tech, The scope and purpose statement was the history of St. Cloud Tech is an important and relevant part of the history of St. Cloud. The school's impact and influence over the past century has not only been on its alumni and educators, but also upon the greater St. Cloud community. The 2017 Tech Centennial Celebration spotlights and illuminates 100 years of history, tradition, and legacy. The past, present, and future come together on the storied campus of Tech High School, the pathways of Lake George, the banks of the Mississippi River, the public parks and schools of our core neighborhoods, and the commercial enterprises of our city. Alumni, students, friends, and citizens are invited to join together during the 2017 Tech Centennial Celebration to reminisce about the past, share in the present, and plan for the future. Throughout this calendar year, you've been reading in the St. Cloud Times a series of stories featuring the 100-year history and legacy of Tech High School. The writer of those stories is in this room, and we thank Jenny Berg from the St. Cloud Times for writing from March through December, 10 months, a decade per month of the story of Tech High School. And that will be a treasured piece of journalistic history that we will keep for a long time. Thank you, Jenny. In the spring of 2017, on April 13th, there was an all-school assembly at Tech High School, and the program there depicted the 100th year anniversary of the dedication exercises of Tech High School back in 1917. And that program also included the induction ceremony of the Distinguished Alumni Awards for the Tech High School Alumni Association. One of those awardees this year was our colleague Bruce Henches. And then the Tech Distinguished Alumni Banquet was held that evening, April 13th, at the Holiday Inn Suites. And so that was the kickoff in terms of events. That was one bookend to the entire year. Now on Friday, July 28th and Saturday, July 29th, we are going to have a very big doings down at Lake George as well as the River's Edge Convention Center. Friday on July 28th, we will have informational tents and tables at Tech High School from noon to 5, self-guided walking tours of historic homes around Lake George Tech neighborhood, maps provided by the Lake George Neighborhood Association from noon to 5, informal and spontaneous gatherings for alumni on Clark Field, noon to 5, tours of Tech High School from noon to 5, Core City trolley tours led by the mayor from 1 to 3, food vendors at Eastman Park from 4 to 8:30, beverage vendors at Eastman Park from 4:30 to 8:30. We will have a music concert by Tech alumni. We are pending and we are negotiating right now with a very regionally popular East African band that will hopefully be playing a concert that afternoon also. And then that evening from 6:30 to 8:30, we have a music concert by Justin Plouffe and the Throwbacks. That should be a very festive day and evening. Saturday, July 29th, we have informational tents, tables at Tech High School again in the morning and the afternoon, self-guided walking tours, tours of Tech High School, gatherings on Clark Field. But all of that will end respectfully around 3 o'clock in the afternoon because that evening from 5 to 11 we have a banquet program at the River's Edge Convention Center. This is a banquet program that is for the entire community. It's not a Tech alumni banquet, it is a community banquet. And tickets for that Saturday evening banquet program can be purchased online at www.eventbrite.com. www.eventbrite.com is where you can go and purchase tickets for that evening. Then the other bookend to this entire year will be in the fall of 2017, and that will be the Tech Centennial Celebration Homecoming Week from October 2nd to October 6th. Those events and times are being determined by the Tech administration and staff at this time. It's, Mr. Chair, because engagement is such a very important part of this committee and this district, as you reminded us, and it was a good reminder. Then also additional items, thoughts, and inspirations that are taking place this year is there's a commemorative edition of the Tech Yearbook. There's Centennial logo that's appearing on all of our advertisements and announcements. Centennial banners have been produced. The Lake George Neighborhood Association project, they created a Tech Centennial Celebration coloring book and self-guided walking tour maps of historic sites. Then hopefully next fall, the Tech High School Alumni Association is going to do a time capsule project. We're going to put all items of importance from Tech High School and the community digital and printed items as best we can into a time capsule that'll be buried on the front lawn of the current Tech. And when the new Tech opens, then that will be unearthed and buried at the new Tech site. That's the plan of the Tech High School Alumni Association. I want to remind us also that the evening of the banquet is going to be very special. Mr. Chair, it's very engaging, and it would be worth to mention that the Tech Orchestra Ensemble and Tech Student Artworks is going to be displayed that evening. Georgina Simon and let me find it right here. Luke Truitt are playing very important roles that evening. Luke Truitt is the keynote address speaker. He's the gentleman that did the graduation speech at Tech graduation, and his speech teacher Carmen Schraw is working with him right now on an adaptation of that speech, something adapted to this event. You can quite imagine what a incredibly gifted speech this young man is going to be delivering that evening as the keynote speaker. We've invited all of our living superintendents back to be introduced and give us a very brief reflection on their term as superintendent as related to Tech High School. Kermit Eastman has accepted our invitation, Bruce Watkins has accepted our invitation, and Willie Jett has accepted our invitation. Tech High School principals that are living have been all invited back, and we've received acknowledgments from Paul Kinney, Chuck Sell, Wally Pretzer, Gail Holmgren, Ed Johnson, Adam Holm, and Charlie Eisenreich will all be part of that program in brief mannerisms. Then we have the oldest Tech student that we have found that's still living, a woman whose name is Wallenberg Wehoff. She graduated in 1935. 82 years ago she graduated. She's 100 years old this year. She's quite an engaging, articulate, spirited woman. She speaks very well. Hope that she'll speak well that evening. But she's accepted our invitation to speak to us and reflect upon being a student 82 years ago at Tech. Won't that be interesting? And right on her heels, we will invite Georgina Simon from this year's class. And Georgina Simon will reflect on being a student at the end of this historic 100 years. And all of us and all of you that know Georgina know what a fabulous young woman and representative she will be for today's students. Then we have a faculty member. One of the oldest faculty members that we could find that's willing to participate is a woman by the name of Patricia Hill. She was on the faculty from 1954 to 1979. She will be speaking and reflecting on being a faculty member at the mid-century time. And then we will have, representing the current faculty, Ayan Omar is going to be talking about being a current faculty member at Tech High School. So we will really appreciate those reflections as part of the evening. The mayor will also be there to make remarks and perhaps present a proclamation. We have a video documentary that we are putting together right now. We've engaged the Ken Burns of St.Cloud, I've been told, the best videographer and film producer in St. Cloud. He's putting together a video documentary of Tech High School, and that will be rolled out that evening. And then we're doing a multi-generational family recognition. We have families, some families in this district that are 5 generations. They go back to the first graduating class, and 5 generations of people are going to be recognized that evening and presented with an appropriate honor. And so that will be something that we'll have 5 and 4 generational recognitions. Again, Georgina Simon will lead us all in the alma mater singing, and then we have dancing and music for your pleasure by the band Canoy. So, Mr. Chair, I think this is a perfect opportunity for everybody in this room to become engaged in this event and spend our good money buying tickets online And everything on Friday is free, excepting the beverages and the food. So that's my report.
Excellent. Thank you, Bruce. Next is the Finance and Audit Committee. Jeff Polreis.
We met before the last work session, Al. I reported at the work session.
Thank you. Next would be Legislative Committee. Bruce Henches.
Mr. Chair, if I might point out, it's fortunate that the Linkages Committee did not meet this past month, or it could have been a rather lengthy report from Mr. Mose.
Can count on it.
I just would say, and that is a joke, of course, but I would want to commend Bruce's passion for community linkages and the things that he has done in leading that committee, from Partners in Education Awards to Partner for Student Success to the things he was discussing tonight, are commendable. And so Mr. Mose was just pulling your leg a little bit. You do a great job. The Legislative Committee also did not meet this month. I would just say that the chair of the Legislative Committee has been asked to join the AMSD Legislative Committee. So that will mean that I'll have some input on the legislative platform for AMSD this coming legislative term. So if anybody has thoughts for that platform, particularly regarding special education, how we might address the cross-subsidy in a more effective way, please let me know. And we'll be talking about that once again when the Legislative Committee begins meeting in August again. And then if I could just make one announcement myself. At last night's St.Cloud Times All-Sports Banquet, the Tech baseball team was chosen as the Team of the Year in Central Minnesota. And that's significant, of course, with all of the sports that there are and all of the teams. But what they accomplished was really amazing. And I kind of recognize that because I used to be the Tech baseball coach. And they went through their regular season and through the playoffs undefeated. They went into the state tournament at 26-0, something that no Tech baseball team, at least, has ever done before. And certainly I think they're deserving of our recognition, and their coach, Steve Taylor, and assistant Greg Martig, and the kids on that team accomplished really an outstanding season. So I just wanted to recognize them, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Next is the Personnel Negotiations Committee, Monica Segura-Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We gave a report last week in our work session meeting.
Thank you. And last but not least is Achievement, Integration, Equity, and Education Committee, Jerry Von Korf.
The chair had an unexpected crisis at the office shortly before the meeting and did not attend. Bruce, do you want to give a short report? Short report.
It would be very short because I am totally unprepared for this, and I can't even think of what we discussed right
Marcia,
now.
is there anything that you want to say?
I can help.
Oh, Monica is here.
I was also at the meeting. We met and we had guidelines for reporting in our data. So we, Dr. Huff gave us a very extensive list of what we want to see when we are going to look at data for students, and this data includes is talk about MCA scores, but also talks about the stars, and it talks about other measurements that we can use to look at the success of the school, of the students and the schools. We also were discussing about presentations that are given to our as a board by the schools, and we discussed that it would be important to talk about the purpose of the presentation. If the purpose of the presentation is to give highlights of the school exclusively, or to talk about measurements of success that school have, or if it's going to include some challenges that they have had and how they have overcome those challenges. And I think that summarizes most of what the meeting was about.
Thank you. Next, future agenda items. Board of Education members may suggest items, topics for future board meeting agendas. Items brought forth should have been previously discussed with the board chair or vice chair, board standing committee, or at a prior board work session or meeting. July workshop topics are the new tech high school update, the proposed revised board policy 506, proposed new policy 534, and closed negotiations strategy. Is there anything that anyone would like to add to that? If not, I'm not going to adjourn at this point. I want to mention that this is Joni Olson's last board meeting, and we would like to thank you, Joni, for all of your years of service, including from the time that you were principal all the way up through the time you were an executive director. You've been a valuable asset for our district and for all of the students in it, and we appreciate the work that you've done. You're moving on to Grand Rapids to be superintendent up there, and they are getting a very good superintendent. So thank you. And with that, meeting adjourned.